say 30,000, is that reasonable? An acre foot?
Well,
Or
right
you-
right now it's
That's
significantly more than that.
Well, now it is,
Yeah.
but let's just say it went down to say 30,000.
Right, right.
I mean, we'd recoup the 100 million.
Yes, yeah, this is an investment that we would plan on as we build out, we would sell all this water as a town builds. So this is not, the real issue we have with NISP is we need to start writing checks before we've had the development come in, so we need to kind of take on some debt and make the investment by the water. But over time, as we continue to develop, we'll be selling that water back out.
Eventually, we recoup it.
Yes, sir.
Recover the cost,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But not 100% if you count, we don't have a way to treat it. So, I mean,
Right.
we're gonna have to have either build that regional treatment facility, which we're looking at with our partners, which there's that cost that we'd have to,
Right,
that
sure.
we cover. Or some of the other conversations have been maybe partnering with some of these folks who are already looking at extending their capacity. But they're not gonna let us do that for free. I mean, there'll be a cost to, but so either way, there'll be a cost to have to, how we take that
Right.
and where it goes after we have it to be treated.
Right, I mean, I think it's fair to assume whether we, partnered with somebody who's already treating or we invested in a new plant, we're probably gonna spend $25–30 million just for our share of that, to just buy, the treatment train in our part of the plant.
But are we gonna have tap fees and such to
Oh, yeah.
pay for
Oh, yeah.
that?
Yeah, we would. So yeah, we've just got the big capital investment of buying the raw water, the capital investment of the treatment plant. And then is, again, people come in, somebody comes in to build 5 homes, we would just say, okay, your water resource fee is this. And I think that NISP, over time, when we have sold that 3,300 acre feet, I have no doubt the town will recoup all of that investment from NISP. And then, I think it also, from the board standpoint, and this is gonna be future boards and really even just a resolution policy that boards academically change. But I think it would be really smart to look, when this comes through, of setting aside part of that water for economic development, taking a certain amount and saying, whether it's 10%, 20, or whatever that is, and just saying, we want this for future business growth, we're not gonna, after we've hit, and, we don't wanna just grow residentially, we wanna hold on to this for economic future. So I think we wanna carve some of that off and maybe stop selling it at some point and just holding on to it, because when we have that next Smuckers or whatever comes through, I would just hate for us to be saying, geez, we got the land, and we got the employment basement, and we got the homes, and we'd love to have you here, but we just don't have any water for you.
We could say the same thing about workforce housing as well.
Right.
We could say 2% or 1% if we want
Right. But
For a board.
depending on where we can go with the build out of the population, whether it's what the demographer has, is predicting, or more along the path that we've kind of taken. But either way, the studies have shown we're still gonna be short that 30, we're gonna need more than the 3,300 acre. That's not, we were short, the total build out need was 9,000 acre feet.
That's right.
And 3,300 is still short, like 5,400 of that, or,
You can total build out from here on, because we already have 3,000.
That's right.
yeah.
And then another
If-
3,000, and we need another,
If population
6,000.
and the build out moves in the direction of those predictions, yes. Now, if something changes, then obviously that 9,000 gap goes down accordingly, but.
Well, and I would also say, at some point in the town, and this is gonna be obviously a future board, that, NISP is a huge investment, and I think it's an investment in our future growth, but, we may say 15, 20 years, if there's not that next big water project coming, we may say, we're out of water, we can't accommodate, you need to bring water again. So we may hit that, and that would certainly have a chilling effect on growth here. But, if there isn't another NISP, if right now, if CBT just went for 62,000 a unit, and a unit is 7/10 of an acre foot, I had John run his calculator math for me, and he said that it'd be like, right now, our portion of NISP is about 100 million. he said that it would, to pay that breaker flood, we'd get about 300 million for NISP. So it's still, you know, right now, as expensive as it is, it's the
Right.
cheapest.
But I still would be prepared that that $100 price tag could double or grow.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna take 10 years before you see the first drop of water.
Mhm.
And what will happen within that 10-year period, nobody will know. Now, Shane and I and Ken were at a leadership breakfast
Right.
last week with Greeley, Loveland, Fort Collins, and we invited Weld and Larimer to the table. Starting to have a bigger regional water conversation with them. I don't know, I mean, what that means or where that's going, because their first thing that they wanted to do was a study in all the areas about, I don't know, what people's perception are, you know, what people think, what does the average, you know, customer citizen. But afterwards, I'm advocating for, I don't think we need to do a study, because I think the average citizen, as we all know, they don't understand water. It's a highly complicated issue. And so I said, why would we waste money finding out what we already know? They don't really, I mean, we found that out. That's why, remember, we spent a lot of time, we had our communications person do that whole entire, like, I think we have a whole brochure or information
Yep.
to try to start educating. And so I would be a bigger advocate of taking whatever monies all of us are gonna pull together, and instead of surveying people, I'll create an awareness program right now about what our needs are as a region up here, what it's gonna cost, what it's gonna take, and start creating that now. And along the way, you can invite people to, you know, you can be very transparent, where
Right.
you can maybe have opportunities to come meet and greet, ask more questions, or if you have questions, you can still get some information that you wanted to gather from a survey in that way. But I'd rather start educating now
Yeah.
rather than later, because if by the time you get a survey done, you've lost a whole year.
Lose
And I
time,
think we need
time,
to
you're
start
right.
that education process now. Average person just thinks all they gotta do is turn the faucet on.
Oh, yeah, you're right,
It
they
magically
don't,
happens.
they don't understand it, but when you talk about 100 million, their ears do perk up.
They do.
Right.
But that's
So-
why, don't you think that's why they need to understand,
Well,
why
sure.
is it so expensive? And why, if
Absolutely.
I already live here and I have my water, they all think that all these dollars we're talking about is just because new development.
Right.
And some of that
That's-
is forced by new development, but a lot of it is, if they wanna maintain the same quality that they're keeping today
Right.
and the same consumption levels, some of this we need to upgrade and make sure that we are, you know, doing the latest and greatest too.
Right.
So I think it's kind of, it's a,
Well, right, I think that, well, two things, Tracy. One is, I think you're absolutely right. I think right now, we know that water's complicated enough that it's silly to survey people to find out that we already know that. If we can put that same amount of money into educating and communicating with them, I think that's a smarter dollar. And I think Ken said it right when we talked about NISP last year, you know, people say, you know, well, we're paying for growth, but, you know, we also know we want more restaurants in town, we want more businesses, we want that stuff. We know a lot of retail places and restaurants wouldn't even look at us, so we hit a certain population. So a little bit of that is, you know, really, if we want these other amenities and these other things, some of that is rooftops, and some of that is still having water just for those businesses to
right.
come.
Or
So,
we want the next Smucker,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So
High-paying
it's,
jobs, you know. More people working in town instead of driving out of town for jobs.
yeah, because as many challenges as we've had with our growth and, you know, how much time we spent on that, I wouldn't trade any community in Colorado that says, geez, we've lost 500 people this year. You know,
That's right.
You know, it's-
I'm not sure they have the problem growth.
it's better to be on the prosperous side of that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some of those communities out there.
There are.
We heard, who was at CML? Any of you guys? Last week?
Yeah,
Oh, no, I didn't.
Last week.
That was here in Windsor?
yeah, yep.
So you,
We
I
heard- I can't
won't
remember
say
who it
it
was, but they were
because we're on TV
declining.
and I don't, but you heard the
Yeah,
one
declining
community.
population, you.
They were like,
to,
we need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're open for,
Around here, there were
Oh, yeah.
saying
Northern
that?
Colorado, I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember who it was it,
Well, because
Garden
we're-
City?
Pierce.
Well, Pierce,
Oh,
Yeah.
we're a little weird.
yeah.
So, and that's gonna be tough. I mean, I know on the west slope, there's a lot of communities that aren't enjoying the, you know, as well as Colorado's doing, you know, so much of that is the Front Range, obviously, Northern Colorado. But at least there, you know, on the west slope, everybody's kind of the same.
Yeah.
You know, when you come here and you see, you know, if you're in northern Colorado, you see some communities doing really well and others not. I think it's gotta be a little bit harder of an adjustment, looking at all your neighbors doing well and.
Yeah.
Or even in the Carbon Valley area, because, you know, I'm just doing a project down there, and it's, in talking to all three of those entities, seeing where, you know, how much money they got in terms of budget to do certain things, because for that project, we had to go to each municipality, and 2 municipalities right away, and of course, this is off budget, no one expected it, but 2 municipalities see the value, but you got one over here, and they're like, well, we're not like the rest of you people. You know,
Right.
we don't have the dollars and the money and the,
But
so,
probably the need.
and they're right in the middle of where the, you know, where the other two are saying,
Okay.
I mean, you know, so they're off.
You missed the
The
fun,
other
you must
two
think. Well,
have
Let's
a-
hope that chip in.
Yeah,
That'll be interesting.
Isn't this gonna be fun?
shall we just wait for Barry anyway?
I don't know that he's
Well,
gonna make it. or win.
well, I think he will, but he could still be another 20 or 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
He said 6 to 6:15, and we've got at least now a majority of everybody.
Okay.
Um,
Tuesdays are guitar practice, sorry. West side of Loveland.
Okay, so let's get started then with the updated kind of session that the town board is kind of wanting to have opportunity to kind of go through. Oh yeah, let's pass these out. You guys know,
I'll take a hard copy,
Yeah, I
just
didn't
for the
think
copy.
it's the greatest.
did you get one, Shane?
Yeah, I've got one.
Get one?
Yeah. So we've got a brief slideshow. I didn't really want to make this presentation tonight, you know, you guys have had that, but there have been some questions that the board has come up. So we just thought the easiest way to address those would be a quick PowerPoint deck to kind of walk you through those. To not belabor anything, but again, to just kind of clarify the questions that have come up from before. So Carl, if you want to start out, because there are a few changes or clarifications from the last time, so he's got that first slide.
Okay, thanks Shane. So, what I'm trying to do here is clear up some inconsistencies from the CIP meeting a few weeks ago. So the first change you're gonna see, water line replacement. The original slide had 600,000. The engineering department changed the location based on the street maintenance work next year. So now it's been reduced to 550 based on that location change. Traffic signals at Crossroads and New Liberty. There's some confusion about the total cost of the
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, I think we had, our PowerPoint had one number and
That's
we
right.
put that another.
Our PowerPoint at 645, it actually is 695. Fleet additions, David had a question. Unit 87, we classed it as an addition. Ken confirmed it as a replacement. The reason it was put in the addition column was because we're replacing it a year earlier, and so technically it missed out on the replacement schedule, and we wanted to highlight that, so we can put it back in the replacement section. It's not a big deal. Ending fund balance summary. Mary, you asked if we could, if you could see all of the funds in one place. Page, let me see, sorry. Page 11 in your packet has that.
In this,
In that, yes. Mary, you also asked the status of capital projects for this year. The end of the packet shows that status. Quick win projects, there was a little bit of confusion as we budgeted them all for 2020. I just wanted to confirm that with everybody. Okay.
Yeah, so it's the full project, it's not just, if it says planning and construction, we didn't budget part of it, it's the full thing, we did the barricade in 2020.
but some of them aren't gonna be completed. They're not all gonna be done in 2020 though, are they?
Well,
Or were most of them?
Well, no, because some of the, we have a couple like the, County Road 13 left turn assessment, I mean, it's just a study. So nothing will be done, but it's just, if we say the study is gonna be fully, you know, we're budgeting the entire study. If we're talking about, I'm trying to think of a project like the, something that had planning and construction components, so we
Right.
just got the full planning, construction components that are reflected in the budget. And that's what was presented to the board, but I think we had a question on whether or not the full amount had been budgeted, and it is.
So all of those that we have on that list, what is it, 10 of them? or
Well, for the quick ones, there's 6 of them.
6? So they're on the budget for next year.
Yes, ma'am.
In the happenstance that maybe one gets delayed, or let's just say something comes up on a project, we all feel it's better to delay it because, I don't know, there's another partner or something coming in. What would you, we would, at the end of the year, when we make that adjustment to the budget, is that how you would account for that?
Yeah, so anytime when we budget for them, if we don't do the project, it's just the money's just there the next year.
Okay, so
So-
it would roll over.
Well, the money would roll over, the project itself would be something that when we did the capital project, we'd say, okay, you guys know we never got the County Road 5 project done, we've had issues, and it's reflected in here. And I would say County Road 5 and 392 is a perfect example of that. So, you know, we budgeted for this year, we're still doing the design. Now we've had an issue with, trying to put in the bike lanes and some CDOT requirements. Now the project has gone
Right.
from $1.7 million to $2.5 million. So it's something that we talked about in the budget, and this is something to carry forward. We never spent that $1.7 million we budgeted this year, but now next year it's more expensive. Yes.
So to follow along with that, it could look like this year we're spending more money than we brought in because we didn't spend it last year when we actually brought in the revenue. Like, let's just say we're fully balanced every year in capital. If we don't spend $1 million on that project and it goes to the next year,
That would be
in
the
theory,
case.
the expenses would be $1 million higher than.
Right, but I would say with capital specifically, because we have a very good balance,
Yeah.
a big reserve in capital. It's really not, you know, because the board hasn't historically spent all the money for capital every year,
Right.
then we've got a reserve, so I think that's like, even tonight, we're gonna get into it in a couple slides from now, to say that we're technically not at our reserve policy for capital, and that came up last night, but it's, you know, really, if the board decides these one-time expenditures are worth it, I think it's perfectly legitimate to spend into that reserve, because if not, you've got $9 million sitting there that never gets spent, right?
You can actually
And-
put it towards.
Right, yeah, so if it's a priority, and again, I think this budget has us going barely that, and that includes like our transportation reserve of 1 million. So, you know, we're setting aside, we're including that as if we spend it. If we don't have that transportation project come up where we match that $1 million, it just doesn't get spent, and we're actually well above our 20% reserve policy.
The 392 County Road 5, we are still scheduled to construct in 2020, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
That's
construction.
moving forward. So let Carl finish, we got a little bit, so we've got a few more slides to just kind of clarify things. Please ask questions as we go, I just want to keep some kind of order.
Well, but, and I want to ask one more thing. Are these projects in a place, like what happened with the first roundabout, where we went in thinking it was going to be one thing, when we actually got into the project and discovered, because we had, you know, some soil and other issues, the cost exponentially grew? Because I don't know how far along those 6 projects are, but let's just say there's an unexpected issue like that, and then the board, though on that one, would just say, let's not do the project. You know, then that money would just get returned.
That's right, yeah, so again, if we put something in for budget, there's nothing that says that we have to spend the money. And if we don't do the project, we absolutely don't do the, you know, it's not like the federal government where we have to give the money back. There's no compulsion on the government to spend it if we don't need to spend it. Yeah, so that's how it works.
10th Street drainage improvements, there was a confusion as to the funding source. Confirm it as storm PIF and not sewer PIF. And phase 1 of Riverwalk, partial funding from park development fees, not neighborhood fees.
Yeah, the neighborhood park, yeah.
Yeah.
It showed that, yeah.
And finally, Fuda Trail, we corrected the typo, it's not 118,000 in funding source. I believe it was, I'm sorry, I can't recall that number.
Yeah, we've actually got a Fuda Trail slide in.
Oh, we do?
Okay, we had that question.
Okay.
So Dean, I think the next slides are on the reserve stuff. Yes.
I have a question that I asked it at the last meeting. On page 126, it was this page. I'll show it to you.
Capital summary.
Capital
What page is that,
summary.
Miles?
It was 126 of the original,
Okay.
so I don't even know if it's in this one. So it's an ending fund balance, but I don't think it was all the funds.
Okay.
And there was, it says projected fund balance, revenue, operating expenses, capital expenses, ending balance.
Yeah.
There's $1.1 million in operating expenses for the Conservation Trust Fund. And my question was, what are these expenses?
And we corrected that. I apologize. If you look at page 11 on your new packet,
Okay.
it's an expanded version of that.
Okay.
And originally what that 111 was, $1 million of it was the administration of the grant that we were expecting. However, I moved that to capital. It was my error. It should have been in capital all along. It was double counted, both an operating expense and a capital expense.
Okay. So conservation.
I think it was the Windsor Trail project.
So I don't see it on page 11, that fund.
Yeah,
Conservation Trust
is the third one
It's the
down.
third one down. Third one down.
Oh, I'm on page 9, I apologize. I was on page 11 of the packet.
It's not on that page.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Dean, could you walk the board again, just kind of through where we're sitting with our reserves right now?
Yeah, if you recall, back in 2017, we wanted to formally adopt some guidelines for our ending fund balances. And so the next few slides are addressing that question. This one, as Shane alluded to, this is our capital improvement fund. And in this fund, we do capital projects that are not in utility funds. Now, we've been having a few good years here with fees and sales and use tax, so we have a good balance to begin with. The one thing I wanted to point out on this slide was that number in red at the bottom, say that 369 number. And as Shane said, that's a little less than what our required reserve policy says. Now, I'm not too concerned about that, and the reason why, as Shane said, if the growth stops, we don't get as much money in this fund. So theoretically, we don't have as many projects to do. Another thing I wanted to point out was that number on the top, the annual depreciation. That's not something that we write a check for. That's not cash out the door. But what I was driving at, or when I put this together, I wanted to have some kind of marker, to know where we would stop. And for this fund, that was the best thing I could come up with. Now, if it ever comes to it, and we want to do a project that, pushes us out of policy compliance, there's a couple of things we can do. We can spread it, we can move it to another year. We can do the maintenance, we can, street maintenance. We do a lot of money in street repair and maintenance, and although you don't like to do that kind of stuff, you can put it off, and until another year, if that policy thing really is troublesome to you. But
We can also cancel projects.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just right. It's just that if this was an operational reserve, and we said, gee, with our operations balance, I think it'd be a concern. I think it would show that we're not really sustaining our level of government.
Right.
I would say with the capital, it's a board's policy. We can certainly, you can cut 400,000 out, I think, pretty easily. I think it above that. And then I'd also say, again, we have things like the transportation reserve, that $1 million, which isn't really right now slated to be spent on anything. It's just it's out there, it could be spent. So we wanna make sure you're aware of that it isn't compliant, but it's not, you know, it's not a grave concern to go through.
So Dean, as we pay the incentive for the mill, I assume it'll be a 2020 check?
I think.
Is that why?
it-
And, yeah, and so.
I saw that somewhere the other day and I thought it would be paid now.
No, so the agreement says that we reimburse them that 1.8 million after they're at least 50%.
Yeah, they're not quite
Oh.
there.
Yeah, and so that's just, obviously, they're gonna be great, they're gonna hit that 50%. They could theoretically hit it, but I believe it's on all the floors, so that means, you know, if they've got that top floor, you know, they've got the bottom floor, obviously fully leased. They've got the second floor, I don't know what Cacciatore's versus the brewery would be, but I would think maybe,
Almost kind of.
yeah, maybe 30% leased, and then they don't have that top floor, so.
But even Steve admitted, I mean, Steve's aware of that.
Yeah.
I chatted with him about that on opening night.
50% of
so.
the total building though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think even when Cacciatore gets in there, I'm just saying in October, I don't think they're gonna be fully leased. And, but they could sign a brewery and have a lease for them, even if they're not open. So it may go this year, but we are showing it for next year just because right now we're assuming that it's not gonna get in.
And then the following year, that drops off and our required reserve is a little bit lower.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that is, I mean, it's a small amount, and granted, we have the 1,000 transportation in as a placeholder. But that could, I mean, we don't know when when that request could come. I mean, we are looking at some things now, when we had the economic development person in here talking to us about some improvements that, you know, are needed. So I think we're gonna be looking maybe at some things that aren't even here today in something maybe along 257 and Eastman, some improvement wise that need to happen. And so I don't think that even though it's there or not there, it's earmarked specifically to transportation.
Right.
So it's not like, I mean, it is, I guess, this board's purview to pull it, you could pull it back in and you could earmark it for something else, but technically it is earmarked for that. And I think once you go down the road in the red, I don't think that's good policy, because today it's 369, and next year, well, it's only 500. We're going, well, it's only 800, well, it's only $1 million. I think this, and the board, for those of us who were on this board, when we created that policy, we created it for a very specific reason.
Right.
And now just to simply kind of say, well, we can kind of, and I think that disregards what the intent was to ensure that all of these funds remain intact and have, you know, keep us in the black, so to speak.
I agree, I think, you know, and also you brought up that some projects, as we get into it, may cost more than we thought. And so rather than canceling the project down the road, I'd rather make those decisions now.
We may get more revenue too.
We might, well, I was thinking about that too, as you were talking about. You know, there's a possibility we're gonna have more revenue. There's also a possibility we're going to recession.
Right.
I don't know, so I really think I agree with Chris.
Well, as we
established that policy for a reason, I think we ought to try to stick to it. It's not gonna be disastrous if we cut 400,000 out.
But remember, it's gotta be from the capital improvement fund and not
I was gonna bring
an
that up, there's
enterprise.
certain funds we cannot
Right.
cut from.
This is.
Right.
Well, you could you still could cut the project, it just wouldn't.
It wouldn't affect
change
this.
It wouldn't change that, right, we cut the project, it wouldn't change that bottom
Right.
red number.
So we have to find items specific to capital improvement fund.
And it's things I would like to see done, but I still think that policy has a good reason behind it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
so the hard question.
So,
This is the park improvement fund.
Yeah.
This one's okay, including the fact you see that 5.8 million asterisk. That assumes we would have that 5.8 ending fund balance, including an expenditure of $4 million at Diamond Valley, which we may or may not do. So if we don't do that one, then that 5.8 goes up to 9.8, and we have quite a bit of room there. Conservation Trust, this is the lottery that is commonly known as the lottery fund. We haven't done a lot out of this fund in the last few years. We get roughly about $250,000 in lottery money a year, so we've just been kind of accumulating that. And you can see that we're well within our,
But is this, so we just got that 2 million grant, and we're gonna have to match some of that. Is this after that match has been made, or is that match yet to come out?
No, the project is reflected in this year's budget, and we actually reflected a $1 million one without the grant. So the amount of money that the town will spend this year is gonna be less. I don't know if Eric factored that in to carry that additional money in there, but that number is gonna go down based on that project. If anything, it'll go up. But I don't know if he's showing, I don't know if we've caught up with that in this budget
Okay.
yet,
But it's
we-
coming out of this budget, and that is scheduled.
Well, we
for
could be matching
2020.
it with CTF. I think that actually a lot of that project, we were using the Larimer County Open Space
Okay.
monies for that project. But again, we budgeted it at 1 million as if we weren't gonna get the grant. Now that we do have it, I think that our share is gonna be, you say, 600,000? Yeah, so we'll have, 400,000 less we'll spend this year than we budgeted.
Okay.
okay? The water
Or no, I think
fund,
you said 400,000. I think it's an $800,000 bid, and we get 400,000 from the, grant, and about 400,000 that we're gonna spend.
on the water fund, there's a few more moving parts in this one. I have included a large number there for that NISP debt service. Now, I want to be clear, we have not issued any debt around NISP as of yet. But if it gets approved and we start doing construction, we're gonna have some debt involved in that. So what I did on this was looking at the information we got from Northern, I just chose the highest debt service here and put that number in there. That line beneath it there, debt service reserve, that is for existing debt. It's for we had a loan to help us with that Kiger project. And we also, had some debt on the Windsor Lake, or the Kern Reservoir dredging from way back when, that we refinanced a couple years ago. So it's not all that much debt, but I just wanted to put 1 year's payment aside.
Dean, I have a question on that, sorry. And I apologize, I guess we're going back in time to 2017. For the future NISP debt service, if we will we use that to start paying down debt, or will that always be part of this reserve and it's always gonna be held
A
back?
lot of times when you bonded debt, they require you to have 1 year's payment in
Okay.
reserve.
Okay,
So they basically, so it'll probably be something that just has to sit there
okay,
until
it's paid
year
off.
20 when we pay it off or
Gotcha.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all right, that makes
that's
sense.
a pretty common requirement.
That makes sense.
next. This is the sewer fund, and again, much similar to the water fund. The debt service of 1 year is an existing loan that we have through the state that we took out. It's through that CWCB program that we took it out. I can't remember which year it is, but it was for that Headworks project that we did a few years ago. And looking down there, that the fund balance as per draft of budget, that $13 million, that's it seems like a large balance, but just this afternoon, we were talking about work we're gonna have to do out at the sewer plant in the next few years, so it's good to get a running start on that.
Yeah, so we're in a lot better position with the sewer than we are, for example, for like NISP. We've got a good reserve, but yeah, when we do a plant expansion out there, when we do all the biosolids work and everything else we need to do at that plant, yeah, that 13 million is gonna be gone. But really, we even talked about doing revolving loan funds and financing it and not just draining the kitty, but Dean's right, it's a little bit of an illusion because it's just money we're saving for our next expansion out there, which is what you charge tap fees, so you can buy that capacity.
Right.
So
That's why we save it.
Yep, that's right, that's exactly right.
Okay. And finally, the drainage fund. same thing as the sewer fund there, just same mechanics, just lower numbers. The drainage fund has always kind of been the poor stepchild of our funds.
Right.
And we struggle to keep it, keep it liquid, but,
Sorry, that's funny.
wow, I didn't even mean to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you,
Ah.
But, and again, this was pretty much the theme of this week was utility week, where Janine, who was in the engineering department, she specializes in the storm drain at MS4. So she and Carl and John and I have been working on adjusting our storm drainage rates to help pay for some of the projects that we have to do. So that will be forthcoming.
Now, the last three, they're small amounts of debt service that's there. It's probably it's under $1 million, from water fund, sewer fund.
Yeah.
Would it behoove us to pay off those debt? Is there any incentive or reason? I mean, one of the things I know the previous boards have always looked at is trying to get things paid for and get out of debt and not have things hanging over our head.
Yep.
These are fairly small amounts. I don't know, is there wherewithal?
I mean,
That's one
that's
year
not the balance.
That's
That's
one
the
year.
internal balance though.
Oh, that's only
Yeah.
for 1 year, that's not the total?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably those
That's
three,
1
the
year.
balance of those, yeah, that's
Okay,
1
it's just
year.
1 year.
It's a
Yeah,
reserve,
okay.
just in
Oh,
case.
okay. I thought, well, gee, if that's all we owe in that department,
Yeah,
I'll
that-
pay it
Okay.
off.
no-brainer.
get out the checkbook, Dean.
I know the board, you brought up a couple times, for us to pull up the rec center and look specifically,
Yep.
prepayment options, and can you buy that down? So I think we can, staff over this next year can take a look at all of our debt, really do that assessment on each one. I know sometimes, a lot of the time, you can't just start doing prepayments, I mean, they can put that in there, that
Right.
the bondholders get
They want the
paid in
payment.
whole, or, so we can do that assessment though, I think that's totally legitimate to look at each piece of debt and say, can we pay this off?
Yep.
And on some, like revolving loan funds, we get their money at 2%, 3%, it may actually not make sense to pay it off.
Right.
It may actually
Right.
say, geez, we're actually doing better in
Right,
our own investments, and
right.
so, but I think it's a fair question to take a look at all that debt and make sure that and sometimes you do it, and the finance director does at the time, and thinks, geez, in 2020, we should pay this off, and then, 15 years later, who remembers that? So it's probably good to,
I'll carve it in the wall.
Is there a
Dean was
prepayment?
here.
Is there a penalty for
yeah,
paying
so,
off
so,
early?
sometimes there is, Tom, I've experienced that before, where they say, if it's a 20-year note, they don't allow any prepayment for the first 10 years, or they'll have that built in there, to where the bondholders get a certain minimum guaranteed payment before you start paying it off.
We have one on the rec center expansion. I mean, the previous board said that we definitely want to pay that off sooner rather than later, as soon as we can, but I know there's some number of years, I can't remember if it was 5 or 7. There was a certain number of years that we would have penalties,
Yeah.
so we have to, and I don't know what that is, that's why I've asked them, and they're gonna pull all that information
So
for
I kind of
us.
figured the tax was gonna generate more than the payment. So we wanted to save that up, and then as soon as we can make the big payment, try to pay it off as soon as possible. Get rid of that tax.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple clarification slides. One is, this was in the CIP program last time, but we didn't have the slide. This is a project that Katie and Stacy talked about last week.
Right.
So this is the Eastman Park Drive corridor study. It would basically take a look, as you guys drive that now, it's really industrial.
Right.
I think that with Katie's presentation, the whole idea is we need to change that entrance. We need it needs to look
Yeah.
a lot more exciting and a lot more retail oriented than it currently does. So this plan would do really mundane things like I take a look at driveway alignments, make sure as they come out of Great Western Industrial Park, they line up on the other side. It would also look at
Landscape?
absolutely landscape. It would be in some ways similar to the Fairgrounds Avenue thing we did with Loveland.
Okay.
When you look at the street standards, and it would also look a little bit at siding. As far as you know, how this thing's gonna look.
Is it only on the north side of Eastman?
No, it would be
The whole-
Eastman,
it's
the entire
both-
run,
both
that
sides.
mile of Eastman, yes, sir.
That 1 mile of Eastman.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't have any
From
problem with
two
that.
fifty-seven.
Yeah,
Right.
From 257. I think that's good. I want to throw something out though. I think first of next year, we should get the master transportation plan.
yeah, 18 feet, yes, sir.
In light of CDOT's report, they're probably not going to do much to help us anywhere. 257, there's plans for further economic development along there. We've talked about maybe extending 257, including County Road 19. This relates back to our master transportation plan. What I'm thinking is, we talk about the small town that thinks big. I think this is a kind of a piecemeal. I think that whole 257 corridor is going to become more important to us. And 257 itself needs a lot of improvement, even beyond this. So, not a question specific to that project, but I think it's just a small piece of a bigger picture we've got to start talking about. And I don't know when we do that.
Right, well, and I think that's really the real follow-up we need with CDOT is, okay, you did your study and you don't think the realignment makes sense and it,
Right.
you know, it doesn't take the traffic off, then what is CDOT gonna do to improve safety and improve these corridors? You know, if the realignment isn't the solution, okay, great, you've still got a couple major highways going through town. 257 hasn't had a lick of maintenance since, I think Craig was in office last time.
We even asked them to take a look at that washboard section.
And also, my point is, there may be more economic development going on there, or people talking about that we are fully aware of yet,
I see,
okay?
right.
So there could be some exciting things coming up, like maybe moving some businesses and things around, so,
Well,
like going back to the County Road 5, we kind of coordinated a whole master plan for that entire stretch with landscaping, setbacks, you know, so I want us to think a little bit bigger about this whole 257 corridor somehow. And I know I'm jumping the gun, okay?
Well, but we have to even think ahead, because I know one of the things that this board, I think, is gonna approve and likes is that cemetery, those cemetery improvements there on the
Yeah.
corner
That's
in
another piece of it.
terms of, you know, the landscaping along the corridor.
Right.
However, I would caution, before they embark and just start doing on what's already
Yes.
there, we
Yes.
better wait until because remember when we looked at creating that extension of 257 there, we had talked about some additional turn lanes that we thought were gonna need for the future. I think those future times are sooner.
I
They
think
may
so.
happen sooner rather than
I think
later.
so, too.
And I don't know, I don't want us to go and put in whatever they're gonna put in, like grass or trees, to have to dig it back up or find that we need more right-of-way there on that corner to get that additional
So I'm
turn
concerned about the
lane.
right of way, because I think there might be
There
something
was
coming
something about
up.
a right-of-way there
Yeah.
on that side
There
by
could
the
be some things
cemetery.
coming
So
up.
I think all of that goes hand in hand. And so I think that
Yeah.
completion of what we're doing there has to be thought about before everybody jumps in and starts fixing things
Well, and
up.
it's just a study, but why didn't Katy Press study all the way down 257 though? That's what I don't.
Well, I think,
Was that, I don't know, I'm just throwing it
Well,
out there.
we did also look at Chris Russ parcel and that connectivity, so it's just really, there's a few outcomes that are gonna be from her study, you know, from her work. One is really taking back Eastman Park Drive and really trying to be a lot more proactive about how that looks.
Yeah.
A second part is, you know, we're attracted to planning about approaching the property owners and talking about doing an overlay district there, an entertainment district or something,
Yeah.
because the existing zoning
right.
isn't gonna probably allow the signage we need, it's
Right.
gonna allow some development that again doesn't really coincide with, I think, what CNSP and what Great Western are looking at right now.
So where will that mile take us to, back to Great Western Drive? Because the other thing I think we
When
got
I
to,
say a mile, I was basically the,
just past right there, the Diamond Valley? That'll
yeah,
take us-
yeah, that's
okay.
basically diamond, so what.
Because beyond that, you're gonna have to be aware, there's a lot of heavy truck traffic that still is gonna happen.
Right.
And those folks are not gonna wanna be encumbered with going around pretty median, I mean, so we've gotta be able to make sure they've got outlets some other ways, cause they're not gonna wanna, Investus still moves along through that corridor,
I think that's what the study is gonna determine.
so,
Well, that's just what my point, to try to sum up succinctly, is we need to somehow look at that north-south 257 County Road 19 corridor from Crossroads to Harmony. And things, not just that 1 mile, but it's gotta be
Maybe
somehow.
next year's budget.
Right, well, I don't know, my thing is I was doing it yesterday, you know, we could have. Yeah, but I know I'm throwing that in, but I think we gotta look at that whole corridor and say, what do we want that to be 5 years from now?
Okay, well, again, I don't disagree, I just think that's
Yeah.
the next kind of CDOT meeting we need to have, is really, okay, if the reroute doesn't work, what's your plan? You know, because I don't think that we should just accept that there's no solution here, right? They've got major highways.
I don't know that they even hinted that there was a plan B to that,
I
which
don't
is
know-
what's
I don't-
concerning, which is what's
I don't
concerning.
know that we can count on.
Well, that's
That's
because
right.
though,
Given the state needs.
there's no dollars.
Right, right.
And that's not their priority.
Yeah,
Their priority is not transportation.
I think we're going to put together a coalition of some of our economic development people in town,
Mhm.
and us, and maybe Severance, and, you know, I don't know how, but I think it's gonna be a big project. Because CDOT, you know, they got $10 billion worth of state needs, right, and less than $1 billion. So, I mean, I understand their problem, but I had the same feeling too. I didn't get any hint that they're going to be.
Right.
I think they went, hey, we're out of here.
Right, that was,
Well,
so I think we're gonna have to be
for me
really
right
aggressive,
now,
and some type of
Not
political
like that was
coalition.
on, like they,
Yeah,
like it's like there's, hey, we wanna push this forward, then all of a sudden they pulled it out from under us, so it's gonna shut.
Well, remember, they were running with Johnny's idea, which was
Yeah.
originally how that.
But that's why there needs to be, I mean, if we choose to move forward on something, there needs to be pressure on all of our legislators down there in Denver, because that's where we
Exactly.
have the hiccup there,
That's what-
is we don't have a current, we don't have a current governor who
Right.
has demonstrated that transportation is a need, and there's no money that's coming forth. So, I mean, that's part of it too, because our new CDOT commissioner said, because we did a draft letter, the MPO did, on behalf of support of the dollars that we are getting for I-25 and that those
Right.
additional dollars
Right.
that we just got. And then they sent out this letter to everybody around the MPO, which is 17 communities. The only other communities that drafted that letter and sent them to the commissioners were Windsor, I did one,
right.
and Weld County did one. And the commissioner, Kathleen Brackney, said, that makes a difference. If you guys want money and dollars to come, they need to see that that you guys are championing this. So that's gonna be really important as we move forward. We can't just say, we wanna have some money for 257. I think we say, we wanna have money for 257, and we need to draft some letters of support from whoever else that's gonna affect, whether it's, you know, this entertainment folks and, you know, the economic development folks and whoever the other partners are to all say, yeah, this is an important corridor. You need to help us find
And we
money.
have some opportunities with the sports park, and that doesn't qualify for the Regional Tourism Authority, but it is tourism
Yeah.
coming to northern Colorado.
Right.
We have economic development going on there, more than we have in the last decade probably. So we've got some leverage there, some good arguments on why
Yeah.
we need to look at this whole corridor and get a political coalition to help us.
Well, since we're talking about, I mean, the bigger issue is even if CDOT can't find us money, even if they can't do that, we've talked to Johnny and CDOT about this years ago, which is if we engineer it, if we say that we'll pay for it, you know, something to be done, you know, even if it's 10 years from now, the point is that if we can have their blessing to help us,
Right,
you know, engineer it, study it, you know, do
Right.
whatever would be necessary, the environmental impact, all of that stuff, then maybe it's us, maybe maybe we are going at it alone if it's a priority for us.
Right.
But we still are gonna have to involve them because we're moving a state highway,
and if we
so.
have a master plan, then we, you know, of course, we have to do it piecemeal, because we're talking
Right.
$2 million here and there, you know? But we need that master plan, of what this is gonna
Yeah.
look like.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still a
Okay,
collaboration.
Thank you.
So anyway, yeah, this is a way bigger conversation.
I feel great, I feel
Okay,
great.
but yeah, I'm
I-
done.
So this
That's all
slide,
I can say.
just put back on, in the original slide for Merrick, you didn't have, you omitted $20,000 east of Water Valley for the slide, for that trail, that wasn't on the original slide. Next one, Carl. So the question came up, I think it was Miles, he had asked a question, you know, he said, you know, we've got a master plan, on Eastman Park, what's new here? And it's really good question, so I'm gonna pass these out, and please, Kate, I'm gonna pass it on. Go to the next slide, Carl, because that's hard to see. So, yeah, and I know, I'm sorry, it's half by 11, so, this, if you look up on the big board up here, so everything that's in the $4 million request, everything on the left side are things that are exactly the same from the Parks Master Plan. So trails, realigned Pluto Trail, all that stuff, were all already a part of our master plan. Everything that's new on the right are the additions. And so parking improvements on the north side, and we're gonna get into that in the next slide. We've got that, we've got the putting takeouts, with the tubing, some public art, some camping, fishing, designated areas, the learning labs, the Oxbow Trail, and then some bird watching plan. So go to the next one, Carl, because this is where, now those are itemized in there. Paul, you'd asked a question last night, because we do have another thing with parking that shows, I think, 625,000 or so, 650,000.
Yeah.
So that includes, if the $4 million for the entire project includes parking and road improvements both on the north and the south side. So that bigger number is all the parking, and it also includes like a parking lot, a small parking lot, and some road improvements over by Treasure Island. The other parking we talked about last night, the north side parking, that's the 375. So if you look at that little teeny map there, and I'm sorry, but it was like, I mean, my God. So,
How many spots was it though? That was one of my big.
Yeah, so that's the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That is your next slide, so you can add those up, and go to the next slide, and then we can back up.
Let's go
Or,
back to-
or wait, what's the next slide? Go to the next one after that. There you go. So right now, the church has 254 spaces, but if you guys have been there for a soccer game, we really use the spaces that are just north of Eastman Park Drive. We kind of use that section of the church. We don't go on the section served by 7th Street. A lot of times the church will hold on to that for their own events. Not always, but every time I've been there, it's been that way. So when you look at that parking lot space from the church that is just north of Eastman Park, there's 111 spaces there that we put to use. The proposed parking on the north side, that will be 188 new paved spots. So that'll also be paving our current little dirt parking lot that on Google Maps is 2 put in. So right now, I don't know how many.
That says 30
Yeah,
spaces.
so when we pave it, we can pave 38 spaces.
Right,
So I just want to be clear that that'll be 188 new paved spots.
between,
Yeah, so that's, yeah, so,
Three.
yeah, so
All
that's
three.
everything in the blue. So we've got,
all three for 254.
You see 80, 70, and 38, right?
Or all?
no, I look on the right side. So all three for 188. And then there's also on the south side over by the Treasure Island, there's another
Yep.
15.
So we'd have 203 new and 168 currently, so we'd have 300.
371.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be a lot, and again, the south side parking, it's a big number. The reason why it's money for not many parking spaces is we paved that whole entrance going back to Treasure Garden, and then we would just get, we paved some, we demarcated some spaces kind of by the clear trail there.
Well, going off of what I said last night, which is what the church has, 254, this would add 203, so, because the church parking lot's completely packed when we've got, full-blown soccer going on a Saturday morning, et cetera.
Can't count on that forever.
Right, and we can't, which is why I brought it up. So adding this adds 203, we still have 51 spot deficit if we're trying to replace what the church, currently
Right.
provides us. But Eric even said this, that, out here, north of the Oxbow Park would be eventually where potentially we could buy land and, put more,
Right.
again, that's assuming a lot of stuff, I understand, because this is privately owned and that would,
Well,
require the purchase.
And
But
I also think along Eastman Park Drive, I think we've got a good opportunity to go in there, and instead of doing this big box parking there, I think we could actually go, we have the fence that goes in there, we have some kind of no man's land that honestly is just kind of weedy. I think we could go through, clear all of that out, pave that whole area, maybe even re-overlay that road, and just put in angled parking. I think we would get at least the 70 spaces he's showing there.
You get more.
It may be more than that. So anyway, I think we've got some good opportunities there, and I would say the reason why I put that 111 spaces that are normally open for our use is, I think that by doing this work on the north side, we're gonna more than duplicate what we've been using on most Saturdays from the church.
No, wait, I'm not listening.
So-
So the church has 254, but we're
Yeah.
not,
But I'm saying that if you go there on Saturday, you know, you've got the space that is just north of Eastman, like
Mhm.
that part of the parking lot, then you have the whole part of the parking lot that's over on Seventh. Most time when I've been there, like the church will still reserve that part that's over by Seventh for their own use. And so as a community, we've been using really those 111 spaces, I think relying on those more. And that's, not to say that's always the case, but again, I think anytime I've been there on Saturday, that's really the section that's been set aside for us. So I think by putting in 188 new on the north side, we should be able to kind of reduplicate, you know, what the church has been.
I've never seen them block that part off, but that's, you know, neither here nor there, it doesn't
Right.
accomplish anything.
So what's the cost of just, if all we wanted to do in this plan
So go
this
back a
next
couple
year
slides.
is just, is it only the 375,000?
Yeah, so the
Or just the
375 is the
parking.
estimate for the north side parking, so it doesn't do, the road on the south side by.
So what would be the cost if we just wanted to approve those improvements?
All the parking.
All the
across
parking.
And the parking.
North side,
Not
south side.
approved.
Was that
Or-
625?
625.
Yeah,
That's at
625.
Does that
625?
include any road improvements to get to the parking?
Yes,
That
it
includes
does.
that, okay.
That was basically, the parking on the
625.
south side, those 15 spots, is basically, most of that cost is actually doing the paving to get there.
So it is paved, they're not like crusher fines or
No,
recycled
that would be-
asphalt
that
or
would be-
anything?
That would be
Okay.
paved, with those parking, so that estimate's 625.
If we postpone parts of this project, what does that do to our reserve balance? Because these funds stay in park.
These are part.
So
If we
that bottom line, that
postpone-
400,
If we do a lesser project, that, whatever the difference is, stays in the fund balance that we can use in another year.
for parks, but now the overall, our 20% reserve policy,
Oh, well, we're so far with that, remember, we were over 5 million over policy right now, and that's assuming that we do the Diamond Valley project.
so if you take the
And
4 million
so
out of
take that out, we're
So
looking
that
at
still
about.
stays in, that
Right,
stays in
that's still in
parks.
there.
So that still count, that would keep us in line with our policy of 20%
Well,
reserve.
I would say if,
That's what I'm going.
Did we see do we see the fund for Parks and Rec? Was that one of the
Yeah,
funds
yeah,
we saw?
we did, we
Or
did.
what's the balance?
well, it's like 5 million,
$5
and
million.
that's
That-
assuming that we spend the 4 million at Diamond
If we
Valley.
don't spend it, we
So it could be
get
more, yeah.
Well, I would say we're really looking at, even with this project, $9 to $10 million in reserves in that fund next
Right,
year.
right.
So
Right.
if the board greenlit 625,000, we would be at 13 million or so in that fund as
And
balance.
that
At an
fund-
average park, and we've got
Yes.
some parks
Yeah.
that we've gotta build
Right.
out, and our average park right now is costing us about $14 million.
14 million?
No.
No way.
Two-ish.
Well, and we've got,
Didn't we do one for like?
Well,
10?
neighborhood, but if you're talking, it all depends on what, are you talking about neighborhood or community? Because
I've got great news, I've actually got that slide in the.
Oh!
So, hold on, but back up, Carl, stick on that. There's only one other thing that I would like to advocate for on this whole list.
Yeah,
I think the water access, you know,
Yeah.
it would just be getting the tubers in and out on 2 different areas.
yeah.
I think it's a really low cost improvement to make there. I mean, I know 25,000 is real money, but I think it would give our residents more access to that mile of river. I think it'd be a nice amenity to put in, and so I would just request you to consider that leaving that 25,000 in as well. So it'd be at 650 versus 625.
Yeah.
We're
And
just
that's
gonna allow
the
people
put
to
in.
individually take whatever they wanna go down
Right
to the river.
now, that's it, yeah, we would just
We
be
wouldn't have
improving.
any,
It-
It
That's
occurs
the
all
put
the
in
time.
and put out, like
Lifeguard
north.
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Well,
it's
the-
put in
ask
here.
them, yeah.
So, in my neighborhood, the
Oh, no, that's
people,
not,
since they put river bluff in,
I'm sorry, north,
Wait,
south.
couldn't hear
I
the
got it.
question.
you know, so people like right now, what goes on is like, on the west side of town, people, since they put the trailhead in at River Bluff, right by off the end of the parking lot, there's kind of it's turned into kind of like a beach. So my kids do it, all kinds of people, I see them all the time, and people float down, they generally get out at County Road 13. Now, so I think people do kind of that already, but it's not, this would be more kind of building it into our park
Structure.
system.
Yeah, it would be, we would clear out a lot of the brush in the area and stuff, we'd make it
Yeah.
clear designated.
I think
Is that
you
what
could
the
probably say-
25 is for? Is it clearing out brush and stuff, or is it
Well-
sand, or is it, what I mean?
I'm sorry,
You're not, okay.
I don't, I don't know that,
There's a-
but I just know it's basically, we would have clearly designated, put out.
Being on Parks Rec and Culture, the advisory board, we did it when they reviewed the capital improvement projects that they were gonna propose to us. And it was actually really good. Eric took everybody on a little bus that the town owns. We went and we looked at some of these projects where you stand on the ground and looked at them. And so we did look at the river, and mostly what it is you have bushes and brush that kind of hang over into the river. It's just kind of messy and thorny, and they would kind of cut that back, so the thought would be there would also be a trail down by the river, maybe it'd be gravel, not paved and things like that. So people could walk along the river then, so it's not just for rafting, we'd open it up where people could walk down there. There'd be like rocks and stuff, people could sit down and read a book, do whatever. But, so it's kind of more than.
Just the brush mitigation could be 25, I understand that, that's,
Yeah.
So I can certainly get that from Eric, but I think it's just.
I'm sure he'll text you because he's
So
watching.
these things here that are outlined, they don't add up to 3.2.
No, they don't.
So what's the
These-
other, like, millions and millions of
Well,
dollars?
The other 3.2 is, are all the projects, so go back maybe one slide, Carl, or there's one or two slides, and no, I'm sorry, go there. So the exact same elements, it's all the other things from
Oh.
the Eastman Park plan. So basically, the bulk is that 3.2 million, and then the additional elements that have come in that weren't a part of the original plan.
The flood mitigation alone is $1.5 million.
Right.
Yep. So again, back up one more slide, Carl. So.
Flood mitigation's a little bit
So,
like the sports park, it could end up, we're budgeting for it, but it could be something that NIST pays all or part of. So we're budgeting for all of it now, it could be less.
Right. So on the left, so that's from our master plan, that's the adopted master plan on Eastman Park, so that's, the 3.2 million is basically if we just did that plan, that's what gets us to the 3.2.
Yeah.
And then the additional elements that came in, or the other 700.
So can the flood mitigation wait until we know more what is really maybe going to happen with NIST? And if there is that opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or is
I would
it
tell you,
something
that's why we
that
bulleted it out. I do think the board has highlighted the most critical element, which is the parking. Staff totally agrees that if we only did one thing next year, it should be the parking, at least on that north side.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
and again, I do think, you know, if you agreed, I think that those kind of put in, put outs and designating that little area for tubing, I think it'd be a nice little public amenity that would kind of improve the use of the area. And I think enjoyment of, you know, maybe the best asset we have in town is the lake. I would say if that's the best, the second best is the Pooh River. And we get tons of use of the lake and enjoyment and not near as much of the river as we should to have such a beautiful asset in town.
I have a question on the elevated plaza.
Yeah.
The elevated plaza / beach access for 90,000. That piqued my interest because it's a way to get people to interact with the water, it sounds like. Would that be the, like, kind of that stacked stone step into the water kind of thing that I've seen up at Estes and Beaver Creek?
Right, that's right. So I think that if you go to, Salida has a great one, Canyon City has a great one. So you have basically a public area where you have the stones set up. Most of the time, it feels nice bench seating, kids are in a little swimming area, it feels really comfortable. But when the river comes up from a flooding standpoint, it's just, you don't go into that area,
It's just
right?
covered.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's the idea.
They're big boulders that are kind of
Yeah.
in that stair step
Yeah.
pattern.
Would it be in the same area that, of this, where this water access would be?
No, it
On
would
the way
be,
to,
I think
or?
it's closer to Eastman Park,
Yeah, I think it's really close to the bridge.
where the takeout
Oh,
is.
so it's in a completely different place?
Yeah, it's right, it's on the
You
south.
see it
Oh,
on
there
here
it is.
somewhere? I can't
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, it's that
So
elevated.
it looks like a mustache kind of.
On the brown part on the left.
Oh, okay.
Elevated plaza
I
is what it's
see,
called. in
okay.
beach
I would like
access.
us to consider including that. I think that's a way to get people interacting with the water that it seems like people have talked about,
Yeah.
accessing the water. And it's not $4 million, but I feel like it gets us a little bit closer to people using
They have
and
one,
experiencing this amenity.
the old fairgrounds in Loveland, Airport Road, right by Barnes Park. It was an area that when they moved the fairgrounds out of Loveland, it was kind of, now I went over the bridge from the ballpark and they put one in, there are all kinds of people hanging, it was cool. Like, but the people congregate there,
Yeah.
there are all kinds of people, but, it'd be a nice addition for sure.
Yeah, I
Two
remember that.
questions.
Where's the
Oh,
water
okay.
access then? Is that up here?
By that blue parking lot, I think?
Yeah, up here, this.
Yeah,
thing
so
right
red
it
star.
says
That's
two
what
That's where you
putting,
get in.
it's a red star, so the first one is up by where the dog park is,
Top middle, yeah.
and then the other one is.
So you'd get in, you'd always get in at the same place, and then
Yes.
you technically would get out down here,
Yes.
Yep,
at this other red.
that's
Yeah,
right.
get up
Way
by
down.
that new cell tower kind of in that area.
Yeah, so if you
Well,
did.
this is the two put out, it's all the way over here.
Yeah, so, you know, people could take out wherever they wanted to,
Oh.
but this is gonna be designated, so if you've gone
So
down.
it has several different points potentially.
Well, no, because I think when you actually go down on the Pooter, you'll see with the overgrowth in there, and some of the banks.
Keep it to it.
And so that's really what this would be. This would be actually going through, I think, cutting the banks, cutting the shrubs out, really making it an easy get in, get out area. So, I mean, people could, I mean, we wouldn't force them, they'd be on their own if it's, you know.
But so what
kid-
kind of insurance or
That's one.
stuff do we have to have in place that says, get in it, I mean, so that, I mean, you know, because, hey,
Yeah.
we are gonna have some stupid kids who are gonna get in, and halfway in, they're not just gonna sit nicely and float till they get to the end. They're gonna, somewhere in the middle, decide to do, I don't know, something else.
Stop, crack a beer.
I think
So
we
what
just
do
have to do the
How do we
same.
protect ourselves so we don't have, you know, any incidents from happening?
Right, I think we just have to put up the same signage that we do, like at the lake, you know, no lifeguard on duty, swim at your own risk, kind of,
Okay.
we would just have to.
And all that is,
And that'll cover stupid adults as well.
I was gonna say, I kind of, yeah.
yeah, there are stupid on both sides,
Yeah,
you're
true.
right.
As a rafter who almost drowned in my 20s and then almost was electrocuted in my 30s, rafting down rivers. you know,
People go in there
Things will
now.
happen. So I did have the same
Kayakers.
question. If we are, most of the time I've done rafting, it's just been on our own, but just
Yes,
go.
yes.
It's not a
Well, it's kind of cool for kids that the
Designated
parents have to drop
area.
them off, then they
But
can
you're okay
same
that
park,
if
you
the
can
community is
go
designated,
and
put
grab it,
in
and
and
go
put
drop
out,
kids off a couple miles
our
away.
liability insurance would cover
Yeah,
us.
right, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, I
At
mean,
your
you're
own
floating
risk.
right by the skate park. If you guys wanna have a heart attack, go there for 5 minutes, and I watch my 10-year-old and I
Okay.
hold my breath the whole
Okay,
time.
I have a bigger question than two, because I really like all this. The 1.5 million flood mitigation, I understand there's possibility down the road, we might get some help from this. How much of this plan could be put in and not destroyed by flood? How important is it to have the flood mitigation before we do anything else?
That's a great question, I can get you that answer.
Because I agree with Miles, the stones would be great, to put it, you know, I like some of the features, but I don't want to put them in and then next
Yeah.
spring,
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there may be some pieces we
So I
can't
don't
really
know.
piecemeal, so that's
Yeah.
that's a good question, so we'll go
How
back
much
to
was the
items list.
flood mitigation?
1.5 million estimated.
And what do we get for that? What are
Yeah.
they doing?
The steps.
No.
Well,
No, that's cutting back.
That's a, I think,
Is that
two
taken out?
mitigation is a lot of,
That's the elevated Plaza Beach access, 90,000, that's what Miles.
But they're kind of similar, one's more for flood and bigger
That's
area.
right. Yeah,
One's for
the
people.
flood access would be more, like what the county did, this spring down by 13.
13.
River
road.
Bluff.
Yeah, the River
Poudre.
Bluff area on the Poudre, that's, Larimer County did all that work. It would be similar, I think they
Yeah.
terraced it back from the river a lot. You know, it's hard to see when you drive by, but if we had that quicker spring, that runoff, we would really have to see that area work.
Right.
What they do is there's a good video, I watched how they're doing it, but at the different levels, they plant different vegetation so the lower levels are gonna get more
What they did
moisture.
on the other side there, if anybody went out to look
On the north side.
on the north
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When they were realigned the
the
river.
river,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they realigned the Oxbow and then they did a lot of flooding mitigation.
So is it 75,000 just to do the plan? Is that what this is in here, the resiliency, or is that, or that's something different? Or does that relate to this 1.5 million you're talking about, or is that something
No,
different?
the resiliency plan is different.
Okay, okay.
That's down the river, that's by Kodak, isn't it, south of Kodak?
Oh, okay.
That was
So
that one slide. That's where-
related
that's
just
where
to
it-
the trail area.
It is.
That's where the
That's
trail,
not
that's where the
related
trail,
to this.
the irrigate, the
Okay, 'cause I don't see-
erosion happened and everything.
I don't see where it says in here where the 1.1.
Yeah, so it's just, it's part of that
Page
base.
16 of that packet.
The new one we got?
Yes, the new packet, page 16, it breaks it out. We got 680 in contingency in there too, 450 for engineering. How difficult is it to answer that question about what features can you put in
Well, it's,
without risk from flood?
I would tell you, it's something that we could get the board out an email tomorrow.
Okay,
I think the parking's safe.
the parking, I think,
Yeah,
sound like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
sound like everybody wanted to do
Well,
that.
I think I hear a consensus floating around about
Oh,
parking.
nice.
So, hey, you
Ah.
and Dean
And Miles's idea of the water access, I think for,
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a
And
minimal
elevated
cost for
plaza.
such a great, and the elevated plaza. But then I think the next question would be this, the 1.5 million on the flood, which if that, I mean, if, I would say that we should do that first, if that's what the report says, or.
right, so I guess my question will be two parts. One will be just checking and saying, look, could we do the elevated plaza and the water access without doing this other flood mitigation? Is there anything we're gonna do here that could get washed out? And if that's the case, I kind of hear from the board saying, maybe wait and see what happens with NISP to see if we get any matching monies for that flood mitigation, and you're comfortable with these as kind of being greenlit for next year.
I think
so-
these four
Those-
items.
Did you say the four?
But I
The things
wanna
that
go
people
back
will use
to
right away.
what Miles had said in that first discussion, because
I think that's-
you were concerned about how it was depleting the park fee to begin with.
Right.
And specifically for Talking Call, I believe, or we talked about that.
Just in general.
Just in general, so
let's
does
go.
this
I think that's the next slide.
answer your, I mean,
Yeah, so here's our park build out slides. So you see, like, this last year, we did Windshire and Village East. Below those are the 4 neighborhood parks that, basically, the board had changed the policy after we were committed to doing these. So we've been collecting those fees for the neighborhood parks. So those are the 4 neighborhood parks we have to do. The community parks that remain are Eastman Park South, which is obviously what we're talking about tonight, Lebu and Tacancala. So go to your next one. Next one. I'm sorry, these are slightly out of order. No, yeah, so the park system build out cost. So that's gonna be, can you blow that up at all, Carl? Can you zoom in on that?
Back to the woods.
see the cost of those parks?
Well, we
there?
did,
They are
yeah,
1%.
because these are half these slides with Redemeyer. To answer Mr. Redemeyer's question.
He gave that. Do you have any more of these?
Back to the way that
Yeah, I think we
it's
just.
strategic, they keep
Yeah.
flashing that.
No, I think he just
There it
printed out
is.
one hard copy. We
Oh.
were gonna email it to everybody. We just thought one to kind of pass around.
Do you wanna see this, Miles?
No, I'll look up there. I just-
Can I just say though, when we were looking at the long-term funding of the neighborhood and community parks, I have to admit, I don't remember the Eastman Park concept even being in
was not.
that.
We did a master plan in 2015 though, so it should have.
I'm just saying, when it was, what, 2 years ago, when Eric came and said, this is gonna be our deficit, even if we're at maximum build out, in our whole growth management area, and how many homes that would be, and the fees and everything, there was still that gap, but I don't remember, I remember us talking about Wayne Miller and all these other community parks and neighborhood parks, but I don't remember Eastman,
Well, I
the
got the
Eastman Park.
2017 and 2018 budget with me. Afterwards, we can look through there and we can see
It'd be long term.
Okay,
So this,
what was in there.
Yeah.
he's kind of zoomed that in. Okay, so, so that almost doesn't help either.
We can just see it.
No, I think it's,
Yeah, just go back to the regular Zoom, Carl.
Okay.
see the talking, million.
Yeah.
But we don't know, that's an estimate, because we don't know what it's gonna look like yet.
Well, and by the time these are built, will these costs hold true? I don't know how
Well,
far out they've.
And I think, I'd say like, Eric brought up last night with Eastman, part of the cost of the build out is acquiring more property, doing some other things. So, like he said a few times, this phase 1, this $4 million project, may be the only phase we ever do. This may, the board may say, we've got these elements from the master plan. We wanna make these improvements, we wanna do our storm mitigation, we wanna do these other things. We don't, right now, it's not our priority to acquire these other big parcels. We don't need to do these other things. So I think these numbers are big, and I think the mayor's right. If we committed to doing everything in those, I think those numbers are gonna only go up. But I think that we can always still be reasoned people to say, Eastman Park is, you know, it's a great amenity, but we don't need to grow it anymore. We don't need to add, you know, the back nine to our disc golf course or whatever the next thing is.
One of the things that was
Well,
in
golf's a whole
here
nother-
too, that came up with pre-cab was like the sewer at Tapancala. Like this includes the entire cost of running the sewer out there.
It does.
But they are supposed to develop on the other side, and it could be something where we negotiate with the developer to where we're splitting the cost, or they help in the cost. So it's another one of those where if we paid for everything, development could end up paying for some of it.
So the
Well,
21 million is not just park fund, it could be sewer fund, it could be development fees.
My
Well,
last
I thought all
conversation,
this had to come out of park fund now.
Yeah.
Well, it would, if it was an amenity for the park would have to pay for it, but there is chance for reimbursement too. So
Okay.
I wasn't in that conversation, but I think
Yeah.
like Tapancala, if it's like the Diamond Valley plan, it's, well, we've got a multi-purpose field here, and then we're gonna do this field over here. It's not something where we just would ever write out a check for $21 million and do it. I think we just
Yeah.
phase it in.
Well, the other thing, which you see on that first column there, that last line, no, sports facilities tend to be higher costs too.
Mhm.
So, and if, what we heard last night is, that's where our greatest deficit is and our gap. We need these 1 acre spots for, I mean, so it might be a board's decision in the future that as we build these out, we might need to build more of those, which means these costs would be higher.
Right.
Because I don't think that's taking that into consideration, that's why there's that little notation. You know, if that would be the thought ever someday, I don't know that if we want them all spread around like that, but if we don't have enough space in the places we have, it might be an idea that somebody wants to do this in the
Multi-purpose
future.
fields, right,
Tapancala is big, and we had this conversation about it because it's, so like it needs sewer, you'd have to build roads, I mean, you're starting with nothing out there. But the cost was super high, that's the cost if you did the whole thing at once. And as a board, we might not do it all at once as well.
You know what, I mean, why is that like what is that, do you remember what that, like how many acres that must be? Must be-
56, how do
Is
you,
that why
the,
it's-
I don't know if you remember.
That
Like
sounds-
56
that sounds
acres,
right.
yeah,
That sounds
it's
right.
pretty big.
Oh,
So,
Yeah, we
what's the
actually-
likelihood of that
We
happening?
stood out there and looked at it.
so that's why we've gotten such a high price tag.
And we're saving.
Yeah.
But that's, would that be the price tag if we develop all of that then, or?
I
Yeah,
think so.
Okay.
Well, I feel like when we had Diamond Valley, we always had like a $30 million long-term Diamond Valley. I don't think we
Right.
ever knew when that would happen or if it would happen.
Yeah.
Well, and I come back to on these numbers, at what day's cost? Was 21 million at 5 years ago's cost to do Tapancala? Is it really gonna be a $30 million park? And by the time we actually need to do it or get around to doing it, I'm just talking about the costs aren't getting any cheaper.
right, I think it's today's dollars, but is my understanding, but so definitely.
But the fees we collect will be greater in the
Fees
future
are
as well.
big, and hopefully
Those-
retail.
Assuming building continues
No,
at
but
the.
maybe public.
So anyway, based
charging
on
that
that,
fee.
and back to like Miles' question from the first time, if we approve these 4 entities for Eastman, is it 4, or is the?
Well, it's really
There's 3
It
plus
was
4
The parking
if we do the
improvements,
flood.
the water access, and the
Right.
elevator closet, so those are the 3 big buckets.
Is, does that, are you okay with that now, based on what your questions were in the last meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see what fees we'll be collecting to offset that. That's, I guess, what I'm missing. But we're getting 4 million because we're not doing Diamond Valley.
That 4 million potentially could come back in here.
For sure.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
Has to.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's
Can't
not
go
going
wrong.
anywhere.
Right now, it's probably, we don't wanna count it until we have it, but it seems likely
Right.
at this point in time.
And if this, Eastman Park was slated for 4, but now if we only approve $1 million,
Not even that.
right about
750.
2 million, because 650 is gonna be, or 625 is gonna be the parking. And then the other study, so it's a little over 2 million.
So,
We save some money
so
there.
you're saying the flood mitigation? is-
If you came back and, to Ken's point, the recommendation would be, before you spend, put in this parking and do all this, you better do this, or you might have some projects that you're gonna be redoing in
Yeah,
potentially 5 to 10
Yeah.
years, or whatever, if in the first flood that happens.
So along that same line, the flood mitigation, if we we're at some point to do that ourselves, what's the likelihood that it could get reimbursed? I mean, if it's already paid for, I know this has to do,
Right.
some
Well,
things.
and again, the NISP money
Trust
is
level
really.
of the federal government is not real high, okay.
Well, Yeah, the NISP is a lot more so they can dedicate wetlands.
Yeah.
And so that's really what, they're gonna help us with the flood mitigation, but they're really trying to reduplicate those wetlands somewhere else as a part of the project. So I think getting.
If we've already done it, you
Yeah.
know, they gotta look someplace else, yeah.
But I would tell you that that's not a big concern of mine. My bigger concern is that it's by designating so much of a wetlands, it's gonna make so much of our park unusable. We'll just be basically selling
That's right.
land
That's another issue.
for far less than it's worth for the project.
I guess I come back to, is the flood mitigation necessary in 2020?
Yeah, I
That I
mean,
don't know.
well,
We don't know, and I think
Till
that's the
tomorrow.
question, that's the
Right.
question.
I'm
Ken
yeah,
gonna-
has.
we
I'm
can
gonna
ask,
guess these three projects
I
are
can tell
okay.
you if it were,
These are
if we were
probably
talking about
okay.
doing the trails, I would say
Right,
we
yeah.
probably wanna do the flood mitigation
And
before we build the
Treasure
trails.
Island,
These
gardens.
other things, I don't know. So if I
I
can
don't
give you
know.
that answer tomorrow.
Right.
Is there anything else on this one?
Was there anything like soccer storage? I don't know how necessary, I mean, I just drove by on the way here, there's a lot of just soccer practice. There were a ton of people there tonight, you know, hour and a half ago. Is that something that's, I don't know how necessary that is, or, I mean,
Yeah, well,
it's on the
I
list.
think there's a lack of it there, which is why it's new on the list.
Is that a building, or what is it?
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
building, I think.
Yep.
What page are you
Yeah.
on?
Yeah, it's back on that.
It's on the one
East-
that-
It's just the Eastman Park with the 3.28 million at the top.
We don't have.
So that's the only one that, everything else pretty, I think could wait, I just wasn't sure how
It's right
critical that was versus, you know, like camping access, obviously that's something we could do now or not do, but I just wasn't, there's so much activity down there, I don't know how critical that is. Like, are they storing it somewhere else and have to haul it in every weekend, or
I
what's
would
going on?
support the soccer storage as well if you wanna, if it would survive the.
Like I said, this- I never heard of it, I think in some of the, like Parks and Rec.
Well, yeah, and that's definitely, again, a new item that wasn't a part of that master plan. I think it's just in part of the whole project.
Okay.
Make it easier for people.
So
If they-
that's a
they
good
get-
question, Barry. I don't know how critical that
They
is.
get this-
That's the only thing that stood out to me on those things we kind of left off, that anything we can do to make it more efficient and easier down there, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get an answer, so I'll get an answer on the flood mitigation, I'll also get an answer from him on the soccer storage, how critical it is. And is that everything for Eastman Park?
I have a question, the
Yes.
last question, I think maybe for Dean. The final question. We have the Parks Improvement Fund, Park and Trail Development is the funding source for the flood mitigation, it looks like. $1.5 million.
Is that right? I think so.
I'm assuming it's, because it's the same.
Okay.
My question is that the proper use of a Parks and Trail Development Improvement Fund? Flood mitigation.
I would be okay
See, I have this
with it.
question
Well,
too.
Because it's related to the overall project.
I mean, the property itself is a park,
Mhm.
and so I think that's, I just don't know where else we pay for that out of. I think it's an improvement to the town
Stormwater?
asset. Well, it's not a stormwater thing, it's a flooding, and it's the park that we're improving. So it's to keep the park from being improved. Just like if we ran a water line to the park for the fountains, that'd be a park improvement, right? Even though it's a water line, it'd be a park improvement. So,
Okay.
you know, if we, you know, build trails through there, that's a park improvement. If we put up soccer fields, and I think that by ensuring that it doesn't wash away down the Pooter, that's a park improvement.
Sorry, Miles, you done?
Yeah, that was the final question.
And then, I just had one question, just something we get asked all the time. So the funds we're talking about for the Eastman project, this is all of the parks funds, is we're not taking money away from roads or other projects.
No,
This is money that has to be spent on parks.
yes.
Just for the people watching at home.
Okay, so Carl, could you go forward a couple slides, because we had the question last night about the Wivet, I'm not gonna.
Well, let's, before you go on to something else, is that, I mean, that's about $760,000 if you add soccer.
Right.
So, and we've got a savings of about 2.5 million then, that can stay in the parks. fund. So that, and I think that's, depending on a couple of questions that you find out, I guess, about the soccer, what that is, and about the flood mitigation. Whatever we're doing with that, okay.
So you're talking about everything that we are considering doing is 1.5?
No, it's
$760,000,
Oh, yeah.
we'll save 2.5 out of this 3.28
Right.
million request.
But there's more money in the reserves besides that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
There's-
so-
Yeah.
exactly.
We're healthy,
Yep.
we're healthy.
Okay. So last night, Mr. Redemeyer asked a question about the Livet footprint. So there it is.
Dimensions,
So,
capacity.
yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, again, do it, we kind of put in some clarification slides just from last night and from the last meeting, so.
So I'm again not going to be in favor of this project for these reasons. The DDA had their strategic plan a couple weeks ago, and I told them about this. None of the business folks who are around that table would be in favor of this, because, for the reason, it does not bring the kind of clientele that brings folks coming into their shops who want to spend money. Because the number of folks truly that come and part of our parks for the summertime activities, we don't see a lot of spillover from that activity. Plus, we do see a lot of folks that it's a turnoff from our own people, because they don't even feel like they can be in the park because it's already so crowded with folks. So something like this could make it even more overcrowded, bring more. And I think these kinds of, and I talked to the folks because, there is somebody out there at Water Valley, they have something very similar. And I'm gonna tell you, I talked to security out there, it's a nightmare for security. They have lots of problems monitoring this when it's in use. And they said it's not easy to manage or handle. And so, lastly, I think we've got potentially Legend Sports Park coming. We're talking to other things. I think for something like this, just like, I know we always talk about we want kids think something for our kids. Well, the summit came and we have indoor bowling and laser tag because of that. I think this is something that we let another private entity someday come and develop something else like that and put that responsibility and cost on them, because even though, this pays for itself and it generates money, it's not generating a lot of money in the long run. And I think it would create more problems. And for me, just personally, I still feel it distracts from the beautiful amenity that we're trying to create back there with kind of a historic setting with our old church, our old schoolhouse. We're going to be doing the Eaton House. We've done a lot of hard work. Even, how many hours we spent on those stupid pavilions? But how many plans we saw to get, because we wanted that thing to feel right with nature and the flow, and now the overflow as we're sitting there, because everybody said we want to make sure you can look through there to see the beautiful lake. Well, now they're going to look through there and see this ugly green plastic thing. So that's.
So what is this, is the sports park, what does that have to do with this? What do you mean?
Because the sports park is going to obviously have things for kids to do there.
Beyond,
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen things, there was always
Beyond
potential.
sports.
Potentially, I think, oh yeah. I know somebody right now is looking to try to bring Top Golf into this marketplace. We've had folks looking at this thing called chicken and cornhole or something, I don't know. But there's other attractions and things to do that are and I'm not just saying when the sports park comes in, don't you think other things will naturally probably try to come in to capture that natural audience that's being attracted here? So.
Top Golf
I guess,
would be pretty ugly wherever it goes up here. Massive.
This, these inflatables, they're a hit down in Water Valley, there's no question.
I'm sure we'll get it back to that.
But I don't know how deep that water is where they're floating this thing, but I know in Water Valley, the kids have to show they can swim around the thing and come back. So somebody's gotta monitor that. activity there before.
You have to be
go out.
certified as to be able to swim without the flotation device.
Right.
The cost, I think, included lifeguards and all that.
It
that's
does, it would
necessary,
be,
yeah.
it would be fully staffed.
I've thought about this a lot, and like I said, I really appreciate Eric trying to look for something that would generate income, but I'm really opposed to it also for the security reason. And bigger for me is the whole vision, like you were talking about, for this amenity in our community. I mean, I'd like to see something that's more natural, more historical than bright colored canvas. So I just don't think it fits the image of what we want our lake to be, as well as the security issues there.
I think I kind of made my point clear, but just for the record, I don't, I think at our age or my age or older, yeah, there's a vision of the lake, and then if you talk to my 17-year-old daughters, there's a different vision of the lake. And so, so I think we need to take that into account. I don't think putting this out there, it's gonna overwhelm the park and just be what everybody sees. I think it'll be floating out there at a certain height and things like that. I don't look at it, I get the DDA thing, but I don't think that's why I supported it. And anything to bring them more business would be good, but I don't think we do this because it's not a revenue generator. I looked at it and said, well, I'm not gonna be against it because of the cost, because I think over time it will pay for itself. So I still feel like, so sports, my kids play sports, and so you go to practice, you have a couple games a week. But in the summertime, what do you do during the day? You know what I mean? So we always say, what are we gonna do for kids? This is, and what we're doing in Eastman's good too, the put in, put out, that's something kids can go do during the day, that's awesome. This would be something similar, and it's not, I think, we're putting up some money, but I think, I'm confident that it'll pay for itself, and some of the projections are pretty good, so that's where I stand. I think it's something, that would be good, and I think it's gonna make the park more diverse, I guess, where you have the museums and stuff. I'm more interested in museums now than I was 30 years ago. There's, you know what I mean? And so there's something for me, there's something for my mom, now there's something for my kids besides just the beach.
Do we know what the admission was on this? It was like $20 to get in?
That was what was proposed.
I think it was like 16 or 18 or something, I guess for like an all-day pass.
So we don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
DDA doesn't want certain people in the area, but we don't know what this will attract. If someone has to put down $20 for an hour's time.
I don't know if it's $20 an
I
hour,
thought it
it
was
sounds
pretty
steep,
close to
but.
that,
But I think we can already kind of gauge, we already have those rentals where they can rent paddle boats. And I'm all for that kind of thing. Again, it's getting people into the river. I don't,
Right.
but in a much better way. And you got folks along, I think the reason why the DDA, their messaging should count, because they're paying very high they're paying 29% in property taxes. And if they want to protect what their venue looks like and their corridor.
I think their opinion counts for sure, I mean, there's no doubt, but they're not the end-all be-all on it, I guess.
A couple of my concerns with this is noise. I mean, it would create a lot of noise. I've sat there while my kids have actually tried to go out and play at the one at Pelican, and it's, you're saying a couple prayers so that, but beyond all of that, one of my other concerns is this was estimated between security till midnight every night, the staffing, the setup alone on this thing to anchor it every year was like $10,000. So the ongoing annual budget just to have this out on the lake before we've collected anything, to have it staffed, et cetera, for however many months, was I think it was $60,000 per year between the setup of it, the security, the extra staffing, et cetera. So
I think that was all built into the cost.
Yeah, I think you.
All the staffing and setup and breakdown was all built into it.
Yeah, but I don't think.
built into what? What do you mean?
It's not,
To
I
the
don't know
cost
where,
that's
do we have
he
those
was
dollars?
proposing.
The generation was not,
It's not.
I think for what we lose, I don't think we gain that much.
So you're in favor, you're opposed.
I think David would be, David is opposed to this as
He's
well.
not here, so he doesn't.
He's not here, but
He's watching.
Dr. Jones? David, are you out there?
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Krista. I mean, basically, she's saying it's kind of tacky, which I kind of go along with. But on the other hand, the kid doesn't think it's tacky, they care less if it's tacky. But last year I didn't like the idea, mainly from the security standpoint. Having to monitor it round the clock, I guess, basically. Yeah, I just don't care for it any more this year than I did last.
Okay.
If we don't like it, we could sell it to Severance.
Yeah, our expected revenue,
And where would they put it?
our expected revenue in 4 years is only $99,000. It's not,
Well, I said I never looked at it as
That's
a
not a
revenue
lot.
generator, I'm saying it didn't, over time, it wouldn't cost us anything. It doesn't cost us anything to do this over time, I wasn't looking at it like this is a big boom for our economy,
Right.
you know?
You're seeing it as another amenity. something
Yeah,
different
like
more.
if somebody just say, I'm not gonna do it because of the money, yeah.
Well, when Eric presented this again to us at the Public Works facility, it was 60, his estimate on the operations between setup.
57,000.
57,000, I remembered it was around $60,000, so.
Right.
I mean, the only
Sorry.
other side of the coin
No, it's in
is
my old one.
if we decided we didn't wanna spend this and we owned it already, we don't have to set it up.
Yeah. So I
It can stay in storage.
I think the consensus is no. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
Miles,
yeah.
I mean,
I heard,
four.
I heard thinking those, so, okay.
I was
I'd
curious,
hear
I
about
was
it
just
again
curious
next
what
year.
you thought.
No, I probably would have supported it, it's something for the kids to do, yeah.
You're okay either way.
That's more like it's worth a shot type
That's
of
what's
thing.
tough, because I see myself playing though.
Oh, I
Oh,
would.
absolutely, it'd be fun.
I mean, I was on the fence about it, I thought about it a lot, that's why I was like, to me, I was like, yeah, I just felt like, hey, this is worth a shot, we should try it. That's low risk financially.
Well, maybe there's a temporary something you can bring in. Last year for Community Cares Night, I don't know where they found this, but they brought in for one night and assembled, but it was on the ground,
Yeah, I
that,
saw
what
that.
did you call that?
Like climbing?
Climbing.
Yeah, yeah, the ropes course.
It's like a
Or
course.
like a
Yeah.
ropes course.
Yeah, so,
So maybe, I mean, and I don't know what, they rented it for one night, they brought it, I mean, and kids and adults loved it.
Too, sure.
I'm sure there maybe is something like this, that instead of it being permanent, that we could, for a weekend, a special
Well,
weekend
you know, like,
or
you look at
something.
Main Park on like, Labor Day weekend, they have activities there that kids can pay to, the bounce,
Yeah.
the bungee cord things and everything else. Maybe not to this extent, but maybe something, smaller footprint over like a long weekend, like over Labor Day
Right,
weekend,
so
something that can be
I
used.
would be in favor if there was an opportunity like that.
It wasn't there all
to
summer,
bring
but over a
something,
big,
yeah, on special, yeah,
And I'd be in favor of some developer wanting to do something like a water park and,
yeah.
commercial,
Oh, yeah.
sales tax, sure. But I just, again, I.
But not in our lake.
It just doesn't feel like a lake thing to me.
Yeah.
For
John
us.
says we're
And
done.
the security concerns, because I know somebody was talking about a teenager. I've been one of the first ones to swim out there at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, that's their business, but, or vandalism, I just,
I never did this.
I don't want kids skinny dipping out there.
I do.
Okay, so there's one
Last
more
year.
item that's not in any of this, that many of us have been chatting about, and I think that's the creamery. And what is the future of the creamery? And I asked you, what does those numbers look like if that whole component completely goes away? In terms of what we save on capital costs and O&M costs? Because there's a lot of concern about that bill. I mean, and I've heard from somebody who is in engineering who went out there and said, that brick is not in good shape. You literally can take your fingernail and the stuff in between. I mean, it has no utilities. And I talked to the folks at the Windsor Historical Society, and I said, how tied and, how prominent and how caring of historic value is this to you? They said, I mean, they liked it, they hoped it might be, but they're not married to.
They sold it to us.
Well, but if you remember, Eric.
We bought it, no, we bought it, they didn't, we paid $70,000.
Eric is the
Well,
one,
that's, they sold
Eric-
it to us, we paid for it.
and in all due
We bought the
respect,
farm.
Eric is the one who advocated for that
Fine.
and wanted that as his, part of his extension. And I'm not sure it's worth whatever those dollars are at the end of the day for the town to invest.
Christy, as I've debated this idea too, my biggest concern was, because I remember when the creamery came up, it was the thought that your mom was on the Historical Society at one point, or still is, et cetera, and just not
She
wanting,
is the
not wanting to dishonor them by us saying,
Right.
let's just get rid of it, thank you, you sold it to us, now we're gonna demolish it or something like that. That was my heart in the whole thing, was that it's not
Right.
taken for granted, that it's been protected, it's been left there because it was a historical building in Windsor, et cetera. Not that it's on the historical registry or anything like that, but, that was my heart behind it, not that it needs to stay or needs to go, but
Right.
that it's not a slap in the face to people that we're trying to protect that building for generations now, or for, a couple decades or whatever the case may be, so that's,
I wasn't part of this secret conversation or whatever,
I don't.
but, so it's kind of out of left field. I mean, is it to save the money, or does somebody else want this property? What's the motivation behind this? It's
I
kind of,
have,
Don't know
Yes.
if he wants the property. I think it's a matter of fiscal responsibility, and does it even make sense? After looking more and more at what the cost is gonna cost, and then,
Well, has he done a cost?
So-
work?
so-
I mean,
no, yeah, so-
and then if you look at most of those requests, there was all these, now all of a sudden all this personnel is gonna be connected to that. I mean, that was part of this, what we saw last night.
So, in this year's budget, in the 2019 budget, there's 300,000 for the creamery. Part of that was the design, and we've done that work, and I think that was about $50,000. So now we have a design. And let me back up and say, at least from my perspective, from Eric's, this is about kind of programming space. It's not really about save the creamery as much as it is, we have a lot of classes and things that we do right now in the museum. And so that kind of limits the number of exhibitions and other things we do, because we're programming a lot of space there. So this is just about, again, we have a lot of people who appreciate our programming, the Saturday events, the different events we do with the kids. And so from staff side, it's about the space. It's not really the creamery. So like I said, we budgeted 300,000 this year. We've spent about 50,000 on the design. We haven't got out to bid to do the construction yet, because, the mayor mentioned to me that, there was some concern from a couple board members on this project, so we've just kind of held off waiting to have this conversation. For the staffing side, so right now, we have Caitlin, she's our curator, but because we're so packed upstairs, she really can't curate in that space. It actually has too many people in there. When we have the new museum space, we'll be able to free her up and actually go and do what she's trained to do, what we've hired her to do, which is a lot of curation. That is gonna leave a void, I think, on the programming side. So Eric did mention in a couple of positions, so one is to take a 28-hour-a-week position to 40. And another was a request for a new 19-hour-a-week person. And that's really just kind of all the programming things. I think having the Eaton House, that availability, that would allow us to do more programming. So I think the mayor's right, as we bring this on, we don't want to spend $300,000, have this facility and not have the staff to program it. I did talk to Eric about another scenario though, so if we have Caitlin that is really needs to do the curation, we do have existing programming that we certainly wouldn't be able to build upon. I'm kind of concerned, could we sustain it if she's doing all that curation? How do we choose here? And initially we talked about, geez, if we took that 28-hour-a-week employee to the 40, maybe that would fill the void. But then we talked about, instead of doing that, because that's a pretty expensive cost, because now all of a sudden we're taking a part-time employee and making them full-time. So that was a $50,000 estimate. So it's, it's really those, the health insurance and everything that adds to that. It's hard to hire somebody qualified that could do all the programming at 19 hours a week. But we thought maybe if we could hire another part-time 28-hour-a-week person, it'd be enough hours to maybe find somebody. I know that's a whole new scenario for you, but we did talk about, because it does seem like a lot going to the museum and that idea right now. So.
Well, we're gonna free up, but, so what's the cost though? Because the design so far is 50, we have 300, that's just for design though. That doesn't include what the utilities are gonna cost to bring in there. And, I mean, isn't it like 500? But and we're gonna free up the second floor of the museum now. What I'd rather see happen, if that building is so costly, is, and we don't have right access, because the access is on the outside. But I saw somewhere in the future, there's a plan to do something better with the access. Maybe instead of the creamery, we figure out the access to that second floor, because that has gotta be about the same square
I was gonna
footage
say, I think that's gotta be
of
about the
what
same
we
square
would have
footage.
there, and then you could have
On the second
programming
floor of the-
upstairs there, because you're gonna move all that stuff out
Right.
over there into storage
And
anyway.
we haven't really figured out what to do with that second floor.
See,
I
the
think the
second
big
floor is
question, and this is
built.
really a safe built question,
An anchor space.
to make it code to do that, because it would be, you
That's
know,
what she said.
you need a lift or something,
And,
you would need a restroom, I don't think we have a restroom up there, so there definitely would be an investment up there, but I see where you're going with that priority.
Well, would we have to have a restroom up there? You know, I was just at the Public Works Building in Loveland on Thursday night, and in there upstairs, there is no restroom. You have to go all the way to the second floor to use a restroom. And that building was only built in the last 5 years, or 3 years.
So it depends on what
That
it's
was
rated as.
crazy.
They get away with that.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, it depends on what it's rated for. I can tell you that, and if anybody who really understands building code is watching this, they'll say, this guy is wrong. But generally, how they look at it with building code is, the more familiar you are with the setting, the lower the code requirement. So that's why in single-family homes, we don't have near that many codes, because we're familiar with our homes. And then you go up to like office spaces and you say, well, people work there, and so if they don't have a lot of public, it's a different assembly rating. When you get up to something like where it's just an assembly,
Right.
and it's just, we're gonna have.
Well, I'm just
public
saying, maybe
events.
that's not the answer, but maybe there's a better answer than we're trying to take something and make it into something that I think is maybe above and beyond after the fact. I mean, we all were excited about it at first, but now as we continue to look at it, as more people have looked at it and seen the actual condition and what it can do, I don't know
looked
that
at it
it's.
And giving us this condition.
Well, I think it's, I would tell you from staff side looking at it, you know, and talk to Eric and, everybody, it does seem like it's basically a completely rebuilt of the building. I mean, it is a real labor of love. There isn't a lot salvageable. I don't know about the block. I can't speak to that, but I'll tell you, a lot of it is kind of a labor of love. And
How old is it? Do we know how old?
it's-
Oh, they would know, I don't.
There was an estimate, like early 1900s, 1910, but they weren't sure when it was built.
I mean, I would hate to get rid of it if it can be
Well,
salvaged in some respect. I mean,
right.
Well, I looked at it, initially I was supportive because I thought, again, one of the things I appreciate about Eric is his creativity, and he's always looking for opportunities. There was a building there that we bought to help the Historic Society and the Mother Statue and all that. And so he was looking at, here's an
Right.
opportunity for some program that would benefit some people. The more I've thought about it though, and the more I've heard about the condition of the building, I'm also looking at the value of that land and whatever the vision is we're gonna have for the back lots there. Okay, I just think there's probably something better we could do with that space, and there may be other options to, I like the makerspace idea and those kind of
I do
things.
too.
But I think it's,
And take that brick and do like what the mill
Yeah.
did. That brick in the tavern is the historic brick that they recreated for a wall. Maybe we
Right.
can take that brick and whatever we create at some
Yeah.
other place and time.
Well, I think that you bring up a good point, Ken, because if we trace how this has happened over the last couple of years,
right,
it first went,
Is this it?
thank you to Ivan, the getting on board with the mother statue.
statue.
And how can we make that happen?
right.
The swap, so then we ended up with this creamery, the mother's done, and she's where she's at. And so we were left with this building a year ago that we said, now what can we do with it? Because we own it, right?
Right.
And as we've gotten to it, I mean, $300,000 could buy us a nice building if we had to
That's-
put one up
that's
somewhere, I would think, even if
demolished.
it's a basic shell. I mean,
Or-
Sorry.
or buy
but
some-
I would think by the middle of next year, the upstairs at the current Art and Heritage is empty.
No, this is.
Which I would
this is the parking
think
lot. It's gonna be This is Old Town.
Cause I've been up there once and I'm trying to remember the layout of it. I would think we'd have the same amount of square footage up on the second floor.
Honestly,
That would be-
I think it'd be more than the creamery, I really do. for the
I do
square
too.
footage. It's hard to say because it's so packed in there.
And I remember there was the shelves and other stuff that
Yeah.
probably could be taken out, but
So.
the ADA compliance and everything else would be an issue because it doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think the code is the biggest, you know, we've talked about like staff offices up there, at least moving our culture staff, maybe some other people up there. I don't like the idea of it being party space, rental space in town. Just, I think we know from our own standpoint, the town has so many facility needs.
Yeah.
Well, and let's not forget that Eric did do the community survey on this, and the community did say that they wanted the maker space, places for ceramics, you know,
That'd be great.
woodworking, that type of thing. I'm completely in agreement. I don't wanna get rid of that
I hope
program.
this, like
I
every
just,
other community, it's a
But I
really
think-
valuable thing, but I don't know
But
if
maybe we
that's
have
the
to find
right
a
facility.
better, a different place.
and that's what we were saying, the upstairs, there's probably more square
So,
footage
but
upstairs.
here's what you need to realize.
Yeah, you agree.
Before the town renovated this building, that third floor where we're sitting in, at one time was condemned as well. And nobody was allowed to go, I mean, it was a dance class, but, you know, but then after that, they did have to condemn it, but whenever who had the vision to recreate this as the town hall, somehow made it so that all that could
At
happen.
what cost?
I don't, yeah.
I don't know, I don't know about this thing that it's falling apart. I think it should be salvaged. I'm not saying we spent $300,000 to fix it, but I'm not gonna advocate taking it down. If we want a real, I feel like we're getting anecdotal information about its condition.
Right.
And we had a real
We had a study done.
inspector come in and say,
I don't know. I know for the design, I know we've had architects and people looking at it, so I think yes, kind of. Again, my understanding from staff, we did talk about, you know, with the DDA, the question came up, is this in the right place? You know, is this gonna get in the way of future development? And then it was basically the conversation there led to, well, if we're doing basically a complete rebuild anyway of this project, because so much of the building's unsalvageable, then do we reduplicate the space here?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we were of, because for me, I do think from a programming standpoint, and we do have, you know, a lot of need for space. Mayor, to clarify, I do think the 300,000 was for design and for the construction. I don't think it was 300 just for design.
I thought it was 350 for designing.
I thought it was 350, I
For
remember.
design
the
and
350 number.
construction though.
Maybe
Because they had to
it
put in
was.
bathrooms.
300 for construction, 50 for
I think the
Yeah,
50
as I
we've
recall.
spent is all we're gonna spend on design. We don't have any more design. to do.
Oh, okay.
So I
So
don't.
I still don't know, I feel like I'm not getting the whole story behind this, I'm sorry, but, I don't know if it's driven by the DDA or somebody else, why. This project was well on its way, it's like when I was elected, and so it was all, and I sat through some of the meetings with the community, like Paul said, where they said, this is what we want, this is what we're gonna put there, and I don't remember how much with the statue and all that, but, there's a whole lot done, and so I just, you know, to all of a sudden say we're not gonna do it, we're gonna tear it down. I mean, I feel like
Well,
somebody somewhere is wanting it or not wanting it, and I don't feel like I'm getting the
No,
whole
I don't,
story.
I don't,
I
that's not the case at all.
I don't think that there's a plan to tear it
No.
down, I haven't heard that, I think that
No.
all I've heard is a question on whether or not we spend, you know, $250,000, $300,000
Yeah.
renovating.
well, somebody talked about repurposing the bricks. That sounds like a tear down to me.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Well, that'd be.
if we did go move forward with this, then that would be
Yeah,
something else that
you know
could
what?
maybe be done with it.
Just because there might be a cooler use by Brinkman or whoever, doesn't, I don't think we should scrape it just because there might be a better use. I mean, there's a,
Well, that's tough to explain. I mean, basically, we spent 70,000, I guess it was some kind of trade-off with the statue, and then another 50,000, so we got 120,000 in it.
Yeah.
And then we turn around and say, you know, scrape it?
Well, Dr. Jones, the statue
Because
was
it
gonna
might
be
be-
70,000, that's where that number came from.
Yeah. But
The statue was 70 grand.
That's
we
how
just
much we have
said-
I know that, but
They didn't have-
wasn't that the?
They own the property, we wanted the statue, the town wanted the statue, so we said, well, instead of buying we're gonna buy the creamery building by buying the statue, basically. and
Okay, so basically, we got 50,000, we would've spent the 70 anyway.
We would've spent the 70 on the
But
statue.
we got 50 in the study.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't, you know, I didn't like it last year either, I think you're trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, really.
Yeah.
And you get
Let
right
me,
down
I
to
need
it.
to write that one down.
But,
We had some good.
But I just,
He's ornery.
you know, I think it's gonna be a money pit, and probably 300,000 is way under
Yeah.
what it would wind up costing to make it into something usable. I mean, if we could sell it to somebody, could we lease it to somebody, let them deal with it, fix it up?
You should go by and actually look at the bricks and everything. It looks like with a strong
And
wind.
shame on
I've
us.
gone by it,
Right.
I've looked at it, I've never like walked up
Yeah,
to
that
it,
was,
Right.
touched it or anything, but
Well,
when as we talk about it, I go check stuff out, you know?
And so,
It's an old
again,
cruddy
so
building.
if it's 250, 300,000 to remodel it, there's another $100,000 requested in 2020 for the FF&E to just kind of take, and if we're gonna do makerspace or anything else, so there's another $100,000 for that work as well, so.
so we're up to 5.
Yeah.
Well, we're
We're
at
up to 5.
450.
450, $500,000.
Yeah, well, and then.
And to
personal
Miles's
property.
point, I don't know what Brinkman's ever gonna do or whatever, but I'm just concerned, kind of like Dr. Jones said, that it could become a money pit. And again, it's anecdotal for me, I'm not a construction engineer, I'm not a developer, but just the bits and pieces I've heard and seen, I'm really concerned that it's not gonna be just $300,000, it's gonna be.
Well, and I don't want this to be a misnomer on the development. There is no solidified plan on development.
Oh, no, there
No, there
is not.
isn't, there isn't, right.
No, but we can
So
all
that's-
kind
I
of,
would-
with
I
a
would you
wink
know
and a
that's-
nod, say that's a pretty
That's not my
prime location.
motivation. Yeah.
If
Well, if
it
we could
wasn't
sell the
there-
land and get,
And it could be, and maybe that does end up happening down the road. I mean, as somebody who sits on the Windsor Historical Society board, you know, and has counseled with them for numerous years, I mean, it was a project near and dear to all of our hearts, and we did want to try to maybe see something happen. But I think that's the thing too, that we are charged with as the board, as elected officials, that, well, on one day and time and place, something may sound wonderful and great, but but that does not mean that as we dive down into the depths of what it really is gonna cost, what does this look like, and if questions that are asked, and if it doesn't seem to make sense, if anybody, we as the board, I think that's what we are elected to do, is to ask those questions. Does this still make sense, spending this kind of money?
Right.
And if we need a place in space, is there a better, I mean, I don't know, and I don't know what the condition of this is, but we just got the Jacoby property. There's a home on that place, isn't there? I don't know if that is a better or worse condition.
Not in good condition.
I have no idea.
major rehab.
Major rehab.
So I don't even want to bring that up.
I don't
But-
disagree with you, Chris, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, but I
Yeah.
think there's a higher threshold when it comes to a historical building built in the early 1900s.
There is, but you have to know that,
I think
if
we
you
have a
ask the people at the
responsibility
Win, I mean,
to
and
preserve
again,
these things.
is there a huge historical significance, like the Eaton House is, because there's the name, you know, there's the person behind, to this building, except that it was built as an old building, there is no other historical significance.
And that's why I brought up, I was sensitive to the Historical Society, because this was their building for a long time, this is what they hung on to, they owned it. And we said, they wanted to build the mother statue, they wanted, you know, but, you're right, so, that's how we ended up with this, it wasn't like we looked to buy this from, you know, the Historical Society to,
Right.
because there wasn't any money exchanged, we just paid for the statue in exchange for the building, so.
All right, if we're simply saying, let's not do the rehab this year, I'm okay with that. If we're talking something further than.
Though that is the question, is do we spend the
To be fair, I wish Eric
$300,000
was
to
here
rehab the building?
Did Eric pursue this project? I mean, I came in midway through. I never got the impression Eric was like advocating for this. I think.
I think he was.
Oh, he was last night, if you look at the
I mean, he said it
budget,
in there because
it's all
I think
talking
that's
about,
right. I mean,
they're moving full speed
But
ahead.
it was town
well,
board
when I was elected, you
driven
guys
to
are
get the
all
money to for the
was on this
statue.
one.
It sounded like a good idea initially.
But I mean, yes, I wish Eric was here
For the
to
statue.
maybe talk more about it, the condition, because we did do a study. And I zoomed in on it right now. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, I'm not all sold on the project. I guess what's it do to the town by losing that space?
Well, but it's not that we have any of this programming or anything committed, so it's not like people they can't come to something tomorrow, they're not coming to something that we haven't even begun
I
to
know.
create or put out there, so it's just, it's a future endeavor at maybe another place in time, or I think, for right now, there's some questions that we need to see.
Sure.
What the total costs are, what this, you know, and some more thought to be, you know, and maybe at least for this year, this project is put on hold until, and it doesn't even mean it has to wait till entirely next year. I mean, the board too has that, as is within their purview.
Well,
If
but
we
remember
get all
this,
the
but
information,
remember
even
this
after
too, when we
approve
started
the
this whole
budget.
conversation about the statues and the building, we didn't have even a planned expansion out of the Public Works facility.
That's right.
Where now we're taking all of our museum pieces and putting them out there, which is gonna free up the whole second floor of the arts and heritage, which is where makerspace would be. It's arts and crafts and stuff like that. That would be the repurposing of that space. I mean, it'd be a great spot for it.
I'm
Well, and you know, I mean, I'm still an
skeptical.
advocate someday, hopeful, that we eventually find our museum space closer to the darn museums anyway.
Did you still have the?
I'm skeptical. I feel like why do you guys care all of a sudden? I still don't feel like I'm getting the whole story.
I agree.
I looked at the cost.
Sorry.
That's a
When I start
plus.
hearing that there's maybe more renovation and concerns about utilities and things than what we initially thought, then I started having second thoughts about it,
Okay.
you know.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, I came into this one halfway
Sure.
through, but
because I was initially, I think the idea of makerspace is really good. I've been a part of that in another community. It's a neat thing for a community.
Right.
But I'm not convinced that this is our best facility for that because of the cost. And again, I'm not a construction engineer, you know,
Yeah.
but I have questions about that now.
mhm.
And with $350,000,
$500,000, how'd you
Well,
get
by the
there?
time you start adding it all
Well,
up.
How do you wanna?
The FF&E plus the
Right,
construction,
Construction.
the design, where it's close to
Yeah.
Plus the personnel that
Right.
is gonna have to be, that, you know, there's not like it's just
Which we would do
300,000
that.
and we're done.
We would do the personnel wherever it is. But I'm just wondering if we can't spend that money better someplace else. That's where I am right now.
Okay.
Also, Paul made a point too, because initially I was thinking there was a historical value to it, you know, and that's kind of changed too, I don't think.
Right.
Based on what?
I think based on the Historical Society owned it, and so I probably made an assumption that there was some historical value. I didn't grow up in.
No, you know,
I wasn't here 100
there
years
were-
ago, but I made
that's
that
not-
assumption, and I value that, you know.
it was a cheap piece of property, and that's the only reason
Yeah.
why it
Yeah.
really became within the purview.
So with more information,
Historical
it's kind of
Yeah.
changed.
It was-
So we'd say we're gonna not sell it, we're gonna own it, and then not renovate it right now?
I think all I've heard right now is to just talk to Eric and staff and say, look, the board doesn't feel comfortable moving forward with any kind of capital.
no one's saying we're gonna tear it down in 2020, we're just saying, do we spend the $300,000?
Yeah,
I
And
think we're halting the
and the
project.
FF&E, which is another 100 and something, so.
Put the brakes
So
on.
we could certainly put up brakes on those things. I think that it would be good to, really do a deeper dive into the second floor.
Let's reevaluate. the
Yeah.
option.
And really see, because again, we have been, from staff standpoint, really talking about what should the space be, and I think in this community, we have a lot of spacing needs, so we've just been kind of brainstorming for a future board
But
discussion.
any money spent on our current arts and heritage, the old Windsor Town Hall, I think is money well spent, whatever it might mean in order to retrofit that building to make it, compliant and
But all
usable.
that money comes directly out of the capital. There's no special fund for that kind of thing. That would come just directly out of the capital budget, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we cut this back, but there could be a smaller portion if we had to like retrofit the upstairs or of the other building.
Of the arts and
for that-
heritage.
to
You
use
might
that space.
require an elevator, or
Yeah.
it's a.
I- yeah,
It's gonna require something.
I think this
Fire
would move from staff side, probably just working next year on the design and getting an architect, somebody to take a look at it, because I do think there are gonna be some code issues there.
Yeah.
And because it is a historical building, I think things like putting a lift in are gonna be challenging.
Yeah.
So,
And it may not be doable either. I mean, we don't
Yeah, it may not
want,
be.
if you can't make it work, then you can't make it
Yeah,
work.
It seems like a great
Well, that's
space.
the building
without
that
using it.
means a lot to the town.
right,
Well, that one does, yeah.
I think, again, if we have,
That one's on the
if
historic
it
register,
is
isn't it?
prohibitive or
I think,
or
I
code
assumed it
prohibitive,
was, but I don't know for sure.
I think that space is like, moving our culture staff up there, put an office space, programming it that way would work. So we kind of have a fallback plan, so we've got, Kind of a worst case scenario for that space would be doing something like that
And that
because.
may not require the ADA.
Right, well, because if we have, if we have
If your closet's
offices downstairs and offices upstairs, and if somebody, you know, can't get upstairs, we have reasonable
There's a fire
accommodations.
station, doesn't it still have a fire pole that you could just slide down if you had the fire escape?
Well, there you go.
You're right,
There's
you're
a
right.
fun thing for
I'm
kids to
serious.
do too.
You're on the committee.
Put a slide,
You're on. Okay, so we'll take a look at that, we'll kind of halt the creamery right now, and then, I can get you the other costs, just kind of the breakout costs for the personnel and that kind of stuff for the creamery.
So we going on with the Eaton House then, is that?
Oh, yeah, I think
Yes.
the Eden House project is a
I'm a
great
yes.
project, yeah.
So
And if I can remember right, at
Every
the Eaton
slide.
House, the 2 annexes are gonna come off, right? Is that, okay.
I think so.
Okay,
This is exciting.
did anybody have anything else about capital projects? Do we wanna have another potential meeting though, based on what we kinda heard last night too?
Or can we just have an update?
Well, and so I would, so what I would ask is, you know, we've got all these operational presentations in October. So, like, you know, with my staffing presentation, you're gonna hear that again each department, so more time, you'll have a little time to ruminate. When the
Oh, so
departments-
we're gonna do kinda like what we did last year, so that's all still to come?
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, so that's the month of October is basically spoken, other than the 21st.
Okay,
Every meeting is gonna be, so this next one, I think we have Public Works and
so we gotta maybe wait to get through all of that?
yes.
Gotcha.
And so I think after we've gone through all that, and if you had time to ask more questions there, I think as we get at the end of October, we may need to get one more kind of come back as a team and talk about stuff, but I would suggest we get through October first.
Okay. Okay.
So were there any other CIP questions?
Some of
Yes.
these are big
On County Road 13, are there any 2 left turn treatments?
Yeah,
Yeah, there was one
so
extra.
that's one of the quick wins.
Is that yours?
No, I have one. There's an extra. Do you want to give that to?
This will complete northbound and southbound left turn treatment analysis,
Do you want the extra?
no construction,
No, that's just,
One of these
300,000.
was voided because we had the first
No,
one,
no, no,
remember
it's not
you guys
free, it's like
brought in
one-
a second better one?
I
I
don't-
The darker one is the good one. It's just
So, I don't need to have those. I
This
do
one-
have one of
this
those
one
too.
Oh, yeah,
Right
yeah,
here.
we got the whole project.
Share
Yeah, it was,
I
it was
still need to
25.
carry this extra paper with me.
Whereas I would be really happy.
No, basically my presentation was to clarify questions.
I don't trust it.
So to the extent you guys had any other.
And I'm not saying I'm against it, I just was curious.
No, I'm still a strong advocate for that. I still have a lot of questions.
I think, are we wrapped up?
Well,
Is everybody-
this was, I think I'd be remiss not to mention though, I don't,
Okay, we'll talk.
or was I don't know that we've actually cut or reduced anything from the CIP though. You mentioned in the beginning that
Well,
$400,000.
Oh, I did have another card, but mine related to what we saw last night, not capital
But I think,
Okay.
He's making a good-
So,
right idea.
I mean, I think the limit was in the CIP, but it was maybe 100 or something thousand.
165.
165.
So still
So,
got
so we'll
300
probably have a couple $100,000 that, where we'd still be out of your policy. So I don't know if there's
Oh.
anything else in the
And
CIP.
by postponing some of the park,
The parks were all parks funds. so
that's all
we-
park
we
facades.
haven't
That was
addressed
my
it.
point earlier, that didn't affect that.
So I don't know if you want to go
Deficit.
to that CIP list.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, you're talking about the deficit that we had, is that right?
Well, it's.
Yeah, 329 or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
it's not a deficit, it's just out of compliance with the policy.
463,
Yeah.
369.
So the,
369?
it was
So the
369, so
165
165 just came out, so there's $200,000 in there.
Page 25 gives you the list.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, page 25, thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
So, 165 just came out, so there's a $205,000 left. That if you cut another $205,000 from this, we would be right back on track with the board's reserve policy.
How much? 250?
205,000.
205?
You know, there's nothing in here that's not good.
What are the, what, go ahead, sir.
I had a question about this going way back a couple weeks ago. The updates to the sewer treatment plant. That was listed as a number 2 or 3 priority.
Which one,
But,
Ken?
that's not gonna help the capital.
That won't help, because that's an enterprise fund.
So really, it's the page 25 shows every CIP project, so that's,
Page 25, okay.
in order to get to, back to your reserve balance, it would need to be one of these.
Now it's the hard part, huh?
What's CP East? Oh,
Well, you got the
community partner.
creamery in here for 100.
Well, oh yeah, we just, well, yes, that's the FF&E, yes, that's
So if
right.
you take, that's 250,
What is it?
Yeah, so
Where?
that's another 100.
that's another 100
Where's the
that's in
creamery?
here.
The creamery restoration improvements, that's the FF&E.
Or, no,
That's
I'm sorry,
cemetery.
that's cemetery.
That's
I can't,
cemetery.
it's such small type. I thought it said
cemetery.
creamery, sorry.
Sorry, the cemetery almost got here.
Sorry, I can't see.
I know we do have the creamery though, we do have the creamery. Carl, do you remember where that is?
It's in small equipment.
It's in small equipment.
Yeah.
That's in.
But that
That's
comes back,
511,000.
that comes all back into capital,
It does,
right?
it does.
Yeah,
So it's still, you're right, so how much was that? Wasn't that 100,000?
I'm trying to remember, hang on a second. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I need my magnifying glass.
Well, because it's like, it's gonna be
HVAC.
No, it's FF&E system things like for, no, 2020. No, so that's like all the,
So now we're down to what, 105?
What's the bus stop installations?
so for the new bus route.
Yeah, but what is the is that like the buying the shelters? and-
Installation.
Yeah, I think it's like the benches and.
Okay, so-
with- There's 4 stops and each one you need 2, you need 1 on each side of the road. So it's basically 8 different places.
And if, would
We're up
we,
to 8?
are we,
Well, no,
are
no,
we,
it's
would
4
we?
stops, but you need 1 on each side of the road.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought there were only gonna be 3
There's only
stops.
3 stops on that.
Last time we
There
heard.
is.
Oh, it is
But
3?
4 is better.
I thought it was 4. Maybe it's 3, but if it's either
Yeah,
3.
Scott said 6.
Okay, so then it's 6.
It's 6, 3 either side of the road.
Okay,
60,240 for creamery small equipment.
so that's FF&E is 60,000? Okay.
But what if we got, I mean, there is an entity that has been having some conversations that I think might provide those items in exchange for, I don't know
Yes.
what.
What I
Right.
It-
Well, for the-
Is that something that we
But it's
can
a-
look at? or-
Yeah, staff is still having those conversations, we're actively meeting with him. Basically, the idea is, this is the person who does advertising, he's done bus stops in different communities. And so-
So they provide that for free in lieu of, then they have the right to sell the advertising.
That's right, that's right.
So
So,
do we get to say what's advertised?
Farmers
yeah, we
No.
would have. Yeah,
Well, within, I'm sure we can't
60
have
grand,
anything
thanks,
like,
Barry.
you
there you go,
know,
very enough for
Thank you
60.
very much.
Vaping?
Well, we would have standards on
Yeah.
that.
I don't like
I think you could
advertising in town.
mostly what I've seen is real estate, insurance.
But they don't get-
Ehrlich Toyota's on the soccer nets at Eastman Park.
Yeah. Again, it's not that much though, it's 75, if I'm looking at that
That's,
right.
You are.
Right, it's not that much.
These are funds.
And I don't know if that would come to fruition or not.
What's that?
That those things, items might be able to be provided in lieu of.
Which ones?
2.5
That,
Oh,
million.
bus stop.
Well, and I was looking at the other one here, which
Regional.
is
bus stop.
museum collections exhibits, possibility of grant
Yeah,
Reimbursement.
reimbursement. That was
Well,
85,000.
no, so that's for all the storage for the rail system. And so that 85,000 we would use as our grant match with DOLA.
Oh,
So really the idea, we're gonna build one section in with this new building. As we add into that, we'd like to go after some DOLA money, so I would suggest that we leave that in, because really I only wanna spend that if we get the grant, but that 85 turns into 170 for us.
I know this is gonna, I know Christie brought this up earlier, but the cemetery restoration,
I was looking at that. That's
could that wait a
landscaping.
year?
That's landscaping?
It's landscaping basically, wasn't it?
Yeah,
along Main
I mean,
Street.
it's really unattractive. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
That's a
it
corridor.
really is a kind of our main gateway entrance. I think that cemetery work is,
Is there,
Yeah.
Yeah, but we might need to delay that just a little bit,
Well,
at least on 1, 2,
Your
5,
point's
7,
right, we
until
need to
we
make sure
know.
we've at least reached out to
But-
the CDOT right-of-way person and make sure we're not making improvements in there. But I don't think that would put us off a year there.
Yeah.
I think it would still be just part of our early planning process.
I'd hate to take it away.
Was there one of these that I thought that we?
Can you go back to the
Maybe
slide where we had the
over?
deficit that we're
You
talking
know what I mean?
about?
Because some of these things that we project
Yeah.
out where we come in kind of a little bit more under budget, is there one of those in here where we
92.
have any little fluff like that?
I'm certain some of these projects are gonna come in less.
There we go.
I'm certain some are gonna come in, come in a little bit higher, so
So where are we at right now that we have?
I think about 145,000 is what I've calculated.
So you started at 370?
I did. I started at 369, I took 165 for the Whibbit, and I took 60,000 for the kind of FF&E.
Yeah, 145.
The 17th. Tell me a little bit more about, transportation is my top priorities, but I need more information about the 392 improvements from Weld County 13 to 17. It says it's a priority 2, should do. That's important.
Where?
I think it's widening, when you go east on, from 13.
Study for the widening.
Yeah,
Is that the study for the widening,
It is.
150?
yeah.
If we don't do a study, we don't do anything.
That just delays the construction.
Yeah, we're gonna start now, Ken.
Okay,
Oh, here it is.
that's to widen that section from 13 to 17, right?
Mhm.
Okay. It's not adding a lane.
Well, this is the study to determine.
And the depreciation, we're just writing
It's just
off
a study,
assets.
right? There's not,
Yeah.
We're not, I think I have your notes here about it's not money we disperse, it's just writing it off.
well, and look at this, this was a
Okay, that's-
three-year plan. The
I know.
2020 cost was 150.
And
In
then,
2021, it was 50,000 for property acquisition.
and then
And then
1.6.
1.6 in 2020.
That's a really important deal too.
Yeah.
What is it doing though, from Weld County Road 13 to 17?
Widening.
Or 13,
Eventually.
just,
13 to
13 to 10,
17.
so basically back to High Hops,
Right, back to high
it's
house.
basically
Oh, yeah.
that stretch.
Well, you have to do the merge there.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
That's
Terrible.
That's a safety issue. Yeah. Okay, I just needed to know what we were looking at.
What page are you on, Ken?
The original one, page 18. I got my little
Oh.
marks in here, so I know where it is now. Trying to see what's a safety thing.
Well, that's one of our quick fixes, right?
Yeah, it
That's in the
is.
quick fix.
Right,
ones?
we need to ease the pain, as somebody said one time.
which one did you bring up?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Scratch it.
fix.
I was just asking what it was to see if there was anything that we could do there.
That's a quick win.
I'm concerned about anything with
Right.
tech security too, that's,
Well, let me ask you this, okay?
yeah.
Not to dig us a hole on the air quality stuff that we were
Yeah.
talking about, but where did we get the 250 number?
I think it was.
It just as a benchmark that we came up with, is just saying, how about we
Yeah,
spend that?
to me, it's just a placeholder
Right.
because we haven't determined what the board wants to do with air quality monitoring. And so initially, the tax application, we put $1 million in there, and then that seemed to be.
That's great.
I'm not trying to take the placeholder out, I'm just-
Because the board hasn't determined what you want to do, if anything, it's just a placeholder amount. So the board may get through the end of this and say, geez, our solution is a $500,000 solution, or our solution is a
Or we get the
$50,000.
industry
It's
to pay
just,
for it.
it's just honestly, after meeting with Professor Collette and understanding a little bit better, at least different monitoring that he's done, we thought that 250 could be a fair workable number, but
Okay, I'm thinking out loud here, because this is something I feel really strong about, that, but I also think there may be opportunities for the industry to pay. There might be some things we could do in the conditional use grant where we require, as a condition, that the industry have a third party. So I'm thinking out loud, okay, what if we cut that to 100,000?
I think we leave it till, we
I
still
throw
hear from
that
the
out and
experts.
see,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I wouldn't support that.
okay.
I would get rid of the cemetery improvements.
Because that's not a safety issue, this is potentially a safety issue.
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
yeah, how much is that cemetery? Is it?
100.
125.
We still have 45.
This feels like a home budget.
Well, the only reason I brought up the air quality monitoring wasn't to do away with it, it was just to say, could that that placeholder be less? That was the only reason that I brought that up,
No,
I wasn't trying to
Any
say,
of
you
these
know.
could be less.
And I've been a
Well,
strong
you could,
advocate.
maybe you take it down to 200, because that gets us our 50.
Let me suggest this, I mean, just while we're talking that concept, if you took the transportation reserve down to
I thought about that
$850,000,
also.
that would, you
I
would
was thinking about that also,
be
'cause
inside
we
your
don't know.
policy, you still have $850,000 that could go towards a project.
Good
Um,
idea.
And honestly, if there was a project that CDOT had that it needed $1 million, we'd go to the board and say, look, this is
We could dip into
$150,000 more.
reserves, so
And
we have
hopefully at that
opportunity.
time, we would know at
Yeah.
that point where these projects are. Because I'm not to burst anybody's bubble, but the odds of us spending all this money next year, that all these projects get in line,
The weather cooperates.
I mean, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
this money relies on tarmac and developing and all that work going. So I would say, I mean, the odds of us actually spending all this money to do these projects is probably 5%. You know, there's a 95% chance we're not gonna do all these. So I think if we did take that transportation reserve down to 850 as a placeholder.
Right.
If there was a real project that came, obviously the board, if you had a chance to partner with CDOT on priority, like 257, you're
We
gonna
could dip
do
into
that.
reserves if we
And at
have
least we would know at that point, you know, because
Right.
again, this policy
Right.
says you wanna hold on to $9 million in reserve. That's what the policy says. So if you,
Right, we could.
you know, you would still be compliant with that and then know,
I was gonna bring up that transportation thing, even though that's dear to my heart too.
well, I
But I
don't,
think,
but the
you know, if
problem
we
is
had
an
an
unknown.
eight
You
hundred
wanna
fifty
lower it
thousand.
just by 50 and still keep out the cemetery?
No, I think the cemetery is kind of important. I mean, it's aesthetics, it's not.
It's also an entryway into the community right
It's
there on that
entry,
side.
it completes the
Yeah,
project,
let's
right?
leave the cemetery.
It'd be nice to get something completed, done, and off the books.
well, and you guys have the presentation
So,
last night, how much
since we
time our
don't have a
cemetery staff took
transportation
just
project,
mowing that.
And
it's
since we
taken a
don't
lot.
know what CDOT's gonna do.
Yeah, but, so I hope they're not gonna put something in that's gonna require mowing along that stretch.
Right, I think we want lower maintenance,
Yes.
higher aesthetics.
Yes.
Low water, low maintenance,
Or no water.
artificial plants.
Some of these things I'm.
I thought it was
driving
rock
by,
and
I'm
stuff. I
looking at
thought it
these
was
people
like-
where
You gotta have something.
Where are you
Yeah.
putting this in?
I support the 150 out of the transportation.
So
I got that on. Say that again.
Yeah.
But
Right now,
it's
let's
a
do
transportation
that.
reserve, it's not even a
I know.
project.
I know,
I know.
it's not a specific project, and we don't know what CDOT's gonna do, we don't know what a master transportation plan's gonna do, and if we had to, we can dip into reserves. If we get a cool opportunity, we'll grab it. So we're okay.
There, yeah.
Okay, so is that, do we have a consensus here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we do.
Amongst 6.
David?
Okay.
David?
Right.
No, probably.
Is he still on board?
He's probably drafting an email.
He's still on board, even though like
On the eastern of Diamond Valley Park, can we, as we get closer to approving this budget, could that come out maybe depending on what happens out there?
Absolutely.
But
The
Absolutely.
Diamond Valley, we have $4 million in the park fund for Diamond Valley, we know it's not gonna, we think it's not gonna happen.
Right,
Because of
so
the,
that was just, when we put it in, I mean, the things have moved so much further from that time of
right,
putting
you
it in.
started this a couple months ago.
That's right. And so, Eric and I, again, it's not done yet, they haven't met the terms of our agreement yet, and I don't want to get ahead of that, but we, you know, meeting with all the principals now, their team, they've put together the right team, they've got a lot of good people working on it, they seem really serious about moving forward, so
So when would you feel confident taking that out of this?
I would say before the budget is adopted. So right now, it's October 8th, I would think in a month, we're gonna know.
Because for someone looking, if we can just, it's, to me, it's a cleanup kind of thing,
Mhm.
because we wouldn't spend the money. But for just someone looking at the budget, it might look
Sure.
funny.
Sure.
If it's in there and cause confusion.
Right.
Sure, yeah, it's absolutely our goal to have that removed by the budget adoption.
Okay, I'd like, yeah.
Because there has been some inadequate and not accurate information that has been spread about our financials and our budget. And I think that it's really important to let folks know that we are, you know, we are doing very well, huh, Dean? And we have good reserves, we are not in a deficit of any kind. And we're very fiscally responsible, and we continue to, you know, have a good, we continue to grow our money every month and every year, so we're
Right.
exceeding, so.
Yeah, the development, the sales tax, it just keeps exceeding our expectations.
Right.
So we need to diffuse
Okay, so,
whatever
so,
those comments are.
me for the capital, I think,
It's
no
spread out.
other questions on this.
We're prepared.
Yes.
Earthquake.
That's it.
Okay, now is that?
Yeah, I
Our
think
job is
that's
done?
everything we had to do.
I had fun with
That was
it.
in softball, that's what I was like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we,
And each question's in 17 parts, so.
all our daughters will, I'll play them.
Is that back to
Plays
school?
love fun.
I just have one question.
Have you ever been phone scammed? Well, if you have, you're not alone.